Hogo, Tungashida, Wakatkanka. Rahanaki, Ake Hosko, Kitaba, Kahitra, Ake Kalita Yakopik, Rusha Okida, Rahanaki Nash, we turn the Naki Bazoba, Rip the Tanka teacher, Islamic Wakanka, but a whole teacher. Well, Mitya can be washed it, but the Wakanka, the Ban Wasana dead, Irohdaka picking. Wastek de Tukatiki had to Hora. I told the talks about the Muxaba, or out there Opa Hiba, and I. I thank you all for standing, and I thank all of you for being here this morning. We are getting geared up for a very, very beautiful day on day 2 of the Lakota Media Summit. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you get some food, make sure you get some coffee and some water, and if you're like me, you doubled up on the donuts. And I say welcome to you again. You know, we're going to be having our opening address here shortly. There's a very great agenda lined up at presenters. We have some people going to be zooming in. We have some people here live going to share their thoughts, their ideas, their motivation, their inspiration with all of us as we talk about the things that we need to in order to change the narrative, to shift the narrative, where we tell our own stories about who we are, where we come from, and where it is we want to go. It's a very beautiful thing. So, you know, as we gather here this morning, how about a nice round of applause for Thunder Valley? You know, very grateful to them. And all of the sponsors, we want to say thank you to each and every one of you for making this conference a reality for our people. And again, you know, like I said, continue on to enjoy your breakfast, your continental breakfast. This is my 4th continental breakfast this morning. I had one at the Holiday Inn. I grabbed one at Starbucks. I came here and had 2 plates. You know, and at this time, I'll stop with the bad jokes. And then I'm serious. Well, no, which comes to do. We're going to get ready now. I'm talking to you with our opening address from Mr. Kevin Killer. You know, and before we bring him on stage, I want to read this about him. So if I can have your attention. Mr. Kevin Killer, a member of the Ogallala Lakota Sioux Tribe, is the current president of the Ogallala Sioux Tribe and coalition of large land-based tribes. He served for 10 years in the South Dakota legislature, representing a district that includes the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. He's a co-founder of Advanced Native Political Leadership, which seeks to train the next generation of Native leaders to run, manage, and lead successful campaigns at all levels of government. He finished his fellowship in 2019 with the Open Society Foundation Leadership in Government program, working on truth, healing, and justice in Native communities in the United States. He attended Ogallala Lakota College and was the first tribal college fellow of a progressive youth leadership development organization, Young People For. Killer expanded Young People's For Tribal College Network into an independent Native-led organization called the Native Youth Leadership Alliance in 2009. Killer serves on the board of the People for the American Way Foundation, National Congress of American Indians, the Indian Gaming Association, and formerly was a member of the Young Elected Officials Network, the Quad Caucus, and the National Caucus of Native American State Legislatures. He was a 2015 Bush Fellow. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and relatives, with a round of applause, please help me welcome to the stage Mr. Kevin Killer.
My sacred hand at the warm and good heart. My Lakota name is Close to Earth, and English name is Kevin Killer. And, you know, I just want to say thank you to Tatewi and our leadership. Thank you to Thunder Valley and everyone who helped put this on. And it's kind of at a critical time, honestly. I also want to say thank you to everybody who participated in the election. I know we just had an election go on in Pine Ridge, and thank you for all those who supported me, both far and, there, and just for all doing that. And I think one of the things that, I was sat in on the panel yesterday where Sarah was speaking, and just for full transparency, that's my partner, but so I needed to make sure I was there in the back and just make sure that we're just supporting each other. But, one of the things that, I'm not sure, did anybody ever hear, because I always tell these stories, because I can hear about all the experience that goes on in my life, and I've, been all over the place, and all that. But did anybody ever hear, like, my world adventure stories in here? Well, okay, all right, so I'll tell that one. So, yeah, going on 15 minutes, so that's about a good time. So one of the, I guess one of the things, because this does relate to narrative change and all this kind of stuff, but, like over the whole, you heard about all those terms, like as a Bush fellow, one of the things I was actually, my internship was looking at indigenous leadership models. And so part of it, I actually picked, I think, Peru, and also I was a part of AIO, which is American Indians for Opportunity. And one of the trips that you take is an international trip. And we ended up going to Ecuador that year. And, before that, you heard I was on the board of OLC, and that was like 2008. I saw Kyle. Yeah, me and Kyle were student senators way back then, and, one of the things that we had a conference in Australia. And the other one was, I think, those two trips. But, in Tunisia, yeah. And when I was in a fellowship, the Open Society Fellowship, I went to part of it was Tunisia. And so over all those trips, like the first one being in Australia in 2008, I was younger. I was probably like 25. I'm 43 now, so almost 18 years ago. But one of the things that, we were, I was in the cab, and I was talking to this cab driver, and he was from Africa. And I was telling him, I was like, yeah, I'm indigenous from America, all this kind of stuff. And he was like, oh, okay, he kind of understood, because, he's from Africa and all that, because, they were talking in a cab in Australia, which is crazy. And he was like, well, where are you from? And he's like, well, I'm from America, I'm from South Dakota, and it still didn't register, And you think about, like, Mount Rushmore, all this kind of stuff, that's the first thing, like, Americans think of, is Mount Rushmore. But, for people around the world, they don't understand, they don't know what Mount Rushmore is. And as soon as I told them, Wallace Sioux, and Crazy Horse, it clicked right away. And he knew, like all the way over in Australia, this guy from Africa knew who Crazy Horse was in the back of a cab, at 25. And that was my first time. The second time, and again, I was in that fellowship of AIO, and we were going down to Ecuador. And we had to actually go down to, we went to Quito. In Quito, you fly in, that's the capital of Ecuador, and we went down to, I think it's called, was it Chevron or something? That's the name of the town. I mean, that's how crazy it is. So that's the name of the town, because they do a lot of drilling down there. And anyway, so we you fly to Quito, which is 5 hours from Houston, and then we got there, we had to stay the night. In Quito, you had to drive like 3 hours by bus down to our little place, get on a Cessna plane, go a whole hour on a Cessna plane to someplace in the jungle, land on a dirt runway, and then ride by boat on these rivers, right on these rivers in the Amazon by boat for another 45 minutes. And then we get to an indigenous lodge. They do like eco-friendly lodges and all that kind of stuff. And one of the crazy things is that, so we get there, we get to this indigenous lodge, really nice, it's fully self-sustainable, everything they do, their own plumbing, everything, amazing food, all that. And anyway, and I started talking to some of the tour guides, because we're like out walking, out walking in the jungle, and they were showing us ants and all kind of stuff, and like, here, eat this ant, it tastes like lemon, it actually did taste like lemon, and they're called lemon ants, and they're like little bitty ants, but it was kind of crazy. And anyway, so we're just sitting there talking, and he was like, well, which nation are you from? And I told him again, I was like, I was like, Oral Sioux, Lakota. He was like, so you know about Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull? I was like, yeah. And he got all excited. And you think about that, like in the middle of the jungle, way over in Ecuador, And it's crazy because even with that knowledge, that understanding, there, we had an interpreter with us over that whole time. And that interpreter actually was talking to us about, just about different issues and all that. And she was, and you can tell like the income classes there, they're a little bit more well off. They lived in a gated community. We had dinner with their family. And, the dad was, pretty nice and knowledgeable and all that. And, he was just talking about Native issues. But, he didn't really know in depth about our Native issues. And so he's just trying to make conversation. And he basically said, he's like, Kevin, I know you're Native American. Do you guys still greet each other by saying how? And we kind of do as Lakotas. We say how Mendak Yapi. But, that's kind of a general stereotype. And I really wasn't offended because I kind of understood that, he had a limited exposure of who we were. And, as Sarah was talking about, and as you kind of seen yesterday, all those stereotypes that kind of exist and they kind of go around the world. And, the crazy part is that, for all the international travelers, you can all confirm this, but you'll go around the world and you'll see American culture. And that's, honestly, that's the biggest export of who, of what, we are. And so you think about all these stereotypes that have been going out of us over like the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And, you think about that person in Africa who, was African and who knew about Crazy Horse. That person, those indigenous people in the middle of the forest that knew about Sitting Bull. And, the other crazy part is that, so again, that was 2016. And then 2019, as part of the Truth Healing and Justice Fellowship, I actually went to Ghana and to study what a Truth Healing and Reconciliation Commission looked like. Because, at my time in the legislature, it was spent, really dealing with some of these issues around race and right fragility, everything that people had. Or, when you brought up race, people get a certain way, especially in the legislature, and they act like, it's just a hard subject for them to reconcile. And so I was like, okay, well, if that's going to be the case, and that's how we're being treated, well, what is going to be the future thing? So that's what we start looking at. And now you see Deb Holland actually doing this now and all that kind of stuff. So just being ahead of things, I think that's something good and something that's really unique about being in positions of media, because all you have to do is research and all that. But getting back to the 2019, we went over there. And so I went to Ghana. People really, they learned about indigenous people in Egypt. They really liked indigenous people once we actually told them. And I told Sarah, I was like, I think I'm going to come back to Africa. I have a weird feeling because, how many times do we get to Africa? And anyway, and so I got an invite from the Carter Center to come back and do election monitoring. And it was in Tunisia. Tunisia is like, the boot of Italy. Like you think about that boot, Tunisia is like right there. You got the Mediterranean and all that. And you just go right there. And I really wanted to be in Tunisia because I was like, I don't want to be in rural Tunisia. I don't want to be anywhere and all that kind of stuff. And sure enough, they're like, well, you got experience. You're kind of brown skin, so we're going to put you down in rural Tunisia. So they basically took me from the capital of Tunis down to like rural Tunisia. And it was kind of funny because if you think about Star Wars, Tatooine, that's actually where Star Wars was shot, Tatooine. So, and it's actually still there. And I was about an hour away from that. And so one of the crazy parts though is that so they brought us in to really look at to watch the polls. I was like getting myself acclimated. They're about 8 hours ahead of us. So of course there's, issues with sleeping and all that. And then I think the hotel we were staying at, the local mafia owned it. So, this is kind of crazy things. But when we got settled in and stuff, they were taking us for tours and all that. And, like the tour guide really liked us because he was talking to us about rural, like indigenous communities, like Berber. They have a different word. It's called Berber, but that's kind of their general word, kind of Indian. But they have distinct tribes down there. And so he was, he's really fascinated with us. So I gave him the book, The Lakota Way, by Joseph Marshall, just to kind of learn and share stories and all that. But, so when we actually started watching the ballots come in, and the ballots were coming in, and Tunisia only had its like second election ever, like a democratic election. And when when those ballots were coming in, they kind of closed us in a room like this, brought all the ballot boxes in. We had to like sit at tables. It was like in a gymnasium actually, but we had to sit in the bleachers, just sit there and watch them. It's not a very glamorous process. You just sit there and watch them, open up ballots, you make sure everything's okay and all that. But they had like election observers from Europe. They had election observers from the U.S., which we were a part of, and they had local election observers. But the crazy part about that whole night, the one thing that I'm going to take away is that there was a young Tunisian guy, about probably like early 20s maybe, and and I noticed him because he had a tie-dye T-shirt on, but on that tie-dye T-shirt was a picture of Sitting Bull, and it's like you go all the way over to rural Tunisia, and I just described it's like 3 hours away from the ocean. And in all these instances, you think about how powerful our leaders were, but also, that vision and that what we need to think about when making this media. Because, you think about what is the biggest export that we have as Lakotas, as we have as nations to share. It's our stories, it's our history, and it's about how we document this. And you're going to hear from Jane Myers, I think, here in a little bit. You think about how big Prey was. It went all over the world, and that's what people are learning about our history. And you can watch Prey in Comanche, which was crazy. I should have watched it in Comanche. I felt stupid for not doing that. I watched it in English, so, but it's just, things like this to think about. And this is what we're trying to change, is this narrative. And government's so important in this process, because we need to figure out how do we get you as media influencers more involved in this process to tell the truth about a lot of stuff, and I think that's been one of the frustrations about being in office, is that you get a lot of false narratives against you by your own people. And it's not because, there isn't any truth there. I mean, maybe it's about half truth, but the problem is that, we need to figure out how do we modernize ourselves as tribal governments, as communities, to help tell these stories about who we are. Because I think when a lot of people, I'm not saying a lot of people, but I think when we work with different governments, they end up, the first thing that pops up in their mind is that, oh, there's a lot of corruption down there, or there's a lot of this down there, or there's a lot of that down there. And granted, there may have been, but, we're trying to change those narratives, and we're trying to change that situation. And granted, people have the right to call a spade, that's fine. But again, highlight the good things. Because I think that's the thing, is that we're trying to set the course for the next generation, and really understand that, these young people, half our population on Pine Ridge is under the age of 25, and all they're on TikTok, they're on Snapchat, they're getting away from those, they're getting away from Facebook, and we're still stuck on Facebook, and so just, making sure that we're always kind of coordinating, working together, sharing truths, and because again, in this day and age, and I think you've seen it with the last U.S. presidential administration about, the media lies, or media does this, and media, and it's setting a really dangerous precedent right now for local governments. And it's just making sure that we're always kind of getting out there, and, we have to be better. And that's, if I do get back in, I'm going to commit to that, about being better, about sharing that. But it's just, it helps paint a context to kind of like the time we're in right now. But just how powerful, we are as nations, in the leadership that we come from, and who we are as communities. And again, that's the biggest thing, is just remember, the biggest, export of that we have is our stories, And so how do we guard that as a tribal government? How do we guard that? How do we make sure that that's being told accurately? And I like the work that Kyle does. I like the work that Tate does, and everybody in this room's doing, because it is telling a new narrative of who we are, and getting another generation prepared for that, And just on that, that last note, I was like, it's crazy, because I was actually, when I was in Tunisia on that trip too, it was kind of crazy, because they have, I can't remember the guy that ran against Billy Mills, but he was from there. And I was like literally an hour from him, but he was like a hero in their country, You think about Billy Mills, like he's a hero, but who told that story yet? They told it once, but there's probably going to be a remake. But, it's like, what are going to be the future stories of our heroes? And how is that going to look? How's that going to be shaped? And how can we support it as a tribal government? One of the things that I was thinking about is, like how they have tax credits for different states. It's like, why can't we propose tax credits for reservations, for them to come down here and recruit, all that kind of stuff. So that is one thing I'm going to work on. I know that Secretary Holland is coming, I think next Friday, to Pine Ridge, and then she's going to be in Rosebud on Saturday. But yeah, we're going to make sure we visit with her about that. So, but again, I thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you for participating in this conversation. And I'll be around, in and out. I got meetings all over the place, but thank you, Tate, for having me and being able to, hopefully help put this in context about what we're doing, but just how we can be better partners in that, and just understand that, I'm fully supportive of everything that's here. And again, I appreciate all of you. Hope you Hechchula.
Thank you, Mr. Killer. How about another round of applause, please? Friends and relatives, there's been a slight change in the agenda. So, and again, this is later on, but I just want to let you know now, Jessie Ren Counter, her breakout session will be in this room following our keynote address. So just letting you know that change in the agenda at this time. As I prepare to get these bios ready, we're going to be bringing on Jane Myers here on Zoom. And we'll have Christian Wasana with us as well for our keynote. And as I bring forward their biographies, friends and relatives, these things that we've been speaking of throughout this entire gathering is really, really eye-opening for me personally. And I know that each and every one of us, whatever it is we may take away from this gathering, this experience, that we can apply that to our life in a good way and to the best of our ability as we are changing the narrative. Our people, we come from a rich background, and no one needs to tell us that, because we all know. We all have grandparents, we all have relatives who have shared those stories and handed those down in some form and fashion. Like, for example, how way over in Indonesia, they knew who Sitting Bull was. They knew who Crazy Horse was. And that's amazing, and that kind of makes me choked up a little, because those leaders had such a giant magnitude of a strength that went throughout the world. I find that very amazing. And as they get ready to bring up Jane Myers, I'm going to go ahead and begin her bio, only because it's 3 pages long. Oh, no, not that bad. You didn't know we should laugh or not, like, is he serious? But please, I have your attention. As an artist, Jane Myers of the Comanche and Blackfeet Nations was selected as one of the featured fine artists for the first ever Comanche Fine Artist Calendar for 2016. She also made her acting debut in an indie film called Bear in 2015. Continuing in film, she enjoyed being an associate producer on the PBS documentary LaDonna Harris, Indian 101. She was honored to be an Artist and Business Leadership Fellowship recipient for 2015 and one of the 4 First Peoples Fund Cultural Capital Fellows for 2014. She also won a Best of Show and a first place for her son's chicken dance regalia during the 92nd annual Santa Fe Indian Market Clothing Contest of 2013. She has won 6 first place awards, including 2 Best of Show and Native American Clothing Contest at the 86th and 87th Annual Indian Market in Santa Fe, 2007 and 2008. Jane was featured on the cover of the July-August 2008 issue of Native Peoples magazine, and her work was featured on both the 2011 SWAIA Indian Market Official Guide and Yearbook. She garnered the Heard Museum Guild 2010 Indian Fair and Market Best of Show, Best of Class and Division first place on a collaborative marionette titled Coyote as Champion. The work has been featured in May 2010 edition of Western Art Collector magazine. Jane's work in the Smithsonian National Museum of American Indian, DC and NYC, the Wheelwright Museum, the Indian Craft Shop, DC, the Archery Museum, Comanche Visitors Center, and the Blackfeet Heritage Center. Most recently, guest speaking as an artist to the Museum of Indian Art and Cultures, Friends of Indian Art in 2013. She now works as the First Native Film and Special Projects Director at the Museum of Indian Art and Culture under the legendary director Della Royer. She is currently featured along with 17 other artists in the new book titled Contemporary Native American Artists of 2012. She was also a community curator to the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indians popular exhibition and book, Identity by Design. Currently with her beadwork on loan to the Museum of 2013, Jane is a noted fourth-generation dressmaker, a third-generation doll maker, a beadworker, traditional regalia designer, and she hails, now I don't want to say this wrong, it's in her language, so I'm going to say it in English. From the sugar eater, the wood eater bands of the Comanche Nation. Myers has achieved equal recognition as a world champion dancer of the Southern Buckskin category of the highest caliber. True to her commitment to Native art and artists, she proudly serves as the vice chair of the Comanche National Museum Board of Directors for a second term. She is also the Native Cinema Showcase Project Manager for NMAI SWAIA's Classification X. She has served as three-year chair for the Native American Clothing Contest during the Southwestern Association for Indian Arts for its 88th and 90th annual Santa Fe Indian Market, August 2009 through 11. She has also served as a publisher and editor-in-chief of Oklahoma Casinos and Entertainment Magazine, a motion picture publicist, and directed her own public relations agency, Jane Myers and Associates, and has worked as a publicist to Mel Gibson on Apocalypto, which included organizing the premiere at the Riverwind Casino in Oklahoma. As a two-term chair of the American Indian Chamber of Commerce of Oklahoma City and the Student of Excellence Awards, Jane always serves her local Native community. Former board memberships include the Native American Heritage Celebration at the Capitol, sponsored by the Oklahoma DHS Civil Rights Division, the Oklahoma Lupus Foundation, and the Oklahoma Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. She had memberships in the following organizations: Oklahoma Federation of Indian Women's and the National Indian Women's Association. In 2008, Jane was honored for her dedication to the positive image of Native people with a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association, and in 2004 was the recipient of the Woman of Distinction Award sponsored by the Girl Scout Redlands Council. How about a round of applause for Jane Myers? Before we turn this over, Christian Wasana. Christian Wasana is a member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. Christian is the owner and creator of motivational movement, I Am, I Can, I Will. Christian is a graduate from the University of Oklahoma, where he received his bachelor's in business administration. Christian has been in media and film for approximately 6 years now and currently working on Paramount TV series Yellowstone. Friends and relatives, we are very honored to have them with us today. How about a round of applause for Christian and Jane Myers?
Can everybody hear me okay? Mic a little closer. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, okay. Hamudakapi, Ihani Washte, Chantana Be Washte, Choose Apollo, Hashuki Tambe Machapi, Washichu Chaje, Mikauki, Chance West in the Machapolo, Oglala Lakota Wichasha Hemachalo, Vilaya Tapika, Oyanka, Emata. Good morning. I just wanted to start this morning, say that we're very thankful and my gratitude for having our guests here this morning. A lot of fun and get into some of the questions here. Have our relative over here from the Tihama, Wichashoyate, and the Machbia Toyate, and then Jane, our relative from the Sintechla Wichashoyate and the Sihasa Bayate. I don't know if you guys want to say good morning.
Imam Ishiv, Habiba Ishiv, Habiba Wona, Waka Nishto Na Ishbit. My name is Christian Wasani. I'm from the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes. Come from the Kitfox Society, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Thunder Valley, for having me. This is awesome what you guys are doing, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for that, Christian. Jane, if you want to say a brief good morning. Hold on one second. Hold on one second, Jane, sorry. No, she's not. No, she can hear her on the laptop.
Is she coming through to the laptop?
Yeah, I can hear her. Sorry.
You can do that now. There you go.
I apologize for that, Jane. Can you hear now? Let's try it again. Oh, no, sorry. I can hear her on here.
Run her through the built-in speakers and we'll put that mic up to it and it'll pick up easily. It's,
Built-in speaker?
you can do the built-in right or the Bluetooth, either one.
We tried the Bluetooth.
Yeah, the built-in and then take the mic over here.
It may be in your audio preferences in Zoom. I'm going to Zoom because it may be that it's on a different mic.
This one here. Projector. Oh, there you go. We turn it up.
Hey, Jane, try it.
Okay.
There you go.
How's that? Manawe. Nanan, it's Jane Myers. Good morning. Hahani. Hahani Mastena. That's my little bit that I know from Lakota. So I'm Comanche, Blackfeet. My grandmother was from Montana, so I am also Lakota and Groban.
Thank you for being with us, Jane.
Sure. My pleasure.
So just to get started this morning, I guess I'll let you go first, but I was going to say, what your background, lived experiences, so on and so forth, that motivated you to get started in this work, in film, but your artistry?
I think everything. I was raised as an eldest child by my grandparents. My grandfather was a full-blood Comanche, and then my grandmother was from Montana, so she's on the Blackfeet side. Were you able to hear me?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, thank you. So that motivated me because I feel like they never really, had the chance. They were always trying to adapt to an ever-changing world for Native people. And we would go see movies, and when we would see movies, my grandfather would say, "Oh, they almost got it right," or "Oh, they had," you never saw natives playing in movies. You never saw authentic Native outfits, language, song, anything. So, but we still went because we wanted to see something, that had natives in it. So that's kind of what inspired me, as a young child from, 5 years old to now, just to try to make a difference for Native people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Christian? What in your background, lived experience, has motivated you to portray your work through film, through any other mediums, motivational speaking? What is the basis for that?
Pretty much. Is it good? This one. Test. Sorry about that. Hello. So pretty much just everything, from where our people come from, what we've endured, what our ancestors have went through. It's almost like how can we not? How can we not want to amplify our voice and let it be known to the world how powerful, how strong we are through this industry? Because a lot of times the outside world they forgot, or they don't take it seriously who we are, where we come from, and what our people been through for us to be here today. And I think it's just the drive and the heart and the passion for our ancestors, our people, the ones before us who fought and who were killed and tortured and raped and murdered, for them, to get our voice out there for them and to let them know, that we're still here fighting for them. And I think it's just that drive, I think that's just what me knowing those things pushes me to be in this industry, to make our voices heard, to give us that spotlight in the correct manner, in the correct way, in a good way, coming from our people. So I think it's just the history and our people and our ancestors, of knowing what we know, to keep pushing and keep fighting through this industry.
Absolutely. And which also makes me build off of, and I guess this could be to you first, Jane, something you guys both spoke to, but what we've seen and what you've experienced so far, but what, I guess, narratives have both of you already experienced in both of your industries? Like I said, with you, Jane, whether it's the artistry or filmmaking, what narratives do you currently see taking place?
For me, it's filmmaking. Yeah, just the fact that I was able to produce Prey, because I worked on that film and we made it during the pandemic. So I went up to Canada while the borders were closed. I wasn't able to come back home or do anything until the movie was finished. So in my mind, I was like, I want to make a really good movie that plays to Native people. I want Native people to see, number one, a woman hero. It's a franchise, so I don't know if you've seen it, but okay. So it's Predator. Everybody loves the Predator. He's worldwide. But I wanted to, try to have some really different placement in it. The whole franchise has never had a woman as a hero, and this is a first. And the fact that it's a Native woman is even better. And I'm Comanche. I was born in Oklahoma, and I grew up in my Comanche homelands. So when I made it, or when we worked on the script, I wanted it to be, something that played, to my people. And the fact that you see Native people and we win, we're not like the villains. I mean, the Comanches, we're the worst because we're always vicious, we're always the villains, we're always the sidekicks. I want them to see us as people, to see us as a family, to see a brother and sister having the same things that most brothers and sisters have. So I think that when I did that, not only did Native people love it, but everybody else loved it too. So it kind of shifted that Hollywood paradigm of, I've pitched many projects before and they're like, well, we don't know who Native, who it plays to. We don't know who the audience would be for this. But just the fact that it was on Hulu has seen a huge increase in memberships in Arizona, Oklahoma, New Mexico, all of the native based places, where we have native people. So I think it's a really good narrative for this time to show that native people are somebody that they can count on as entertainment watchers, film goers, but also as great subjects if it's done in the right way.
No, absolutely. I can definitely appreciate that fact. And how about you, Christian? What narratives have you seen in your work?
I think I've seen many different types from the wrong information to not being native and portrayed on the screen. But what I can say is I feel like we are evolving. I feel like the industry right now is coming together better than ever within our native people behind the camera and in front of changing it, of making a push and a stand for true authentication of who we are and our people and the storytelling of us, because actors, directors, producers, whatever it may be, we have that same ability, we have that same drive, but from our true standpoint of who we are. We're out there. We got many people out there, and I think we're starting to come up and make that stand and have that voice and the change for our people. And I think it's coming together more than ever right now.
Awesome. It's really inspiring, I think, from so many standpoints, and it's really refreshing to hear that you bring that up. And then speaking off of that, are there any, I guess, lateral impacts on narratives that you, I guess we could say that also for you, Jane. Are there any unintended impacts that you've noticed in doing, I guess, having your impact in your field?
For me, the impact comes for language. I really love language. I always grew up hearing native languages. So my impact, I think, is, for Prey, I can speak to Prey because Prey was the first time that a new film at the time of release was also simultaneously released in the native language. That's never happened before. There's been like Star Wars that was dubbed into Navajo, but Star Wars was already like over 25 years old, at that time when they did that. So it's really easy to do the dub. Or I shouldn't say easy, but you have more time. Also, like when they did Finding Nemo was 20 years old. But this kind of shows that you can be all inclusive of Native culture. I think that when non-Native people are writing stories or having something that really depends on our Native culture, then they need to go the full mile. They need to include language in there too. Because a lot of times they just, pick a tribe and, you don't have the right language base or language isn't even considered. So I think they should, always consider language. And for me, that would just help us as a Native people because that would, so many young people are influenced by media. And if young people see somebody speaking, Comanche, and they're like, oh my gosh, they would run to their grandmother and say, tell me how to say this. Or tell me what does this mean? She said this, what does that mean? I had one of our promotional posters because we did Native community engagement. I had one of our promotional posters done in Comanche. It says Kahtania, which is, which is like the big fight or like the turning point. So I even had the posters made in Comanche. And, I don't think Disney has ever, or 20th century, no one has ever really done that. So I just kind of used my influence as a producer just to push a boundary everywhere I could, just to introduce them to, our culture, to introduce them, into making better avenues into, our culture. And just like I said, do it 110%.
it's really, really great to hear. And then same with you, Christian, as far as unintended impacts that you've noticed that your work has had.
You know, I work on you know, Yellowstone, obviously, and there's a character who plays a native who's not. Um, and it kind of has triggered a lot of people, you know, in the native community. But I think there's a balance of, you know, yes, you know, that character should have 150% been native. And that's, I think we can all agree on that, you know. But the fact that the way that she plays her character and respects our culture, and the way that she dives into who we are as Native people, you know, I think that at the end of the day, you know, the representation for our people in that aspect was pure in a way, you know, because there's a lot of story behind that. But I think you know, that's happened a lot in the industry, you know, our people being falsely not native, you know. But, you know, I think like I said, as we are growing in this industry, you know, people are starting to, directors, producers, writers are starting to understand, you know, that authenticity is out there. You know, we have actors, we have people who are wanting to be in those spots who they should give a chance to. You know, give us a chance. Let us show you who we are, how beautiful we are, how we can portray our natural selves. You know, but like I said, I think in that aspect of characters and even behind the scenes, you know, we're definitely growing and we're evolving, and with our voices, we're pushing to get to that point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so back to you, Jane. When you go through your creative process for looking to, I mean, maybe not always tackle narratives, but when you're going through your creative process for developing projects, um, what does that look like for you?
Oh, it's in various stages because I get offered different jobs. I can go back and tell you about Prey. When I first read the script, I thought, oh my gosh, this has potential. You know, if I can really go in there and influence this, if I can influence story, if I can, you know, influence this whole narrative, it has potential. I read a lot of projects, and you know, just because it has native content doesn't mean that you have to take it, right? But you look for a creative team that you can balance and work well with, because if you have a creative team that's willing to listen, then you can really influence what the outcome is on the whole project. And that's kind of my main thing. I do because people, you know, when I tell people I took it from, why would you do the Predator? And you know, the way that I see it, because maybe I have a different lens or a unique lens, but the way I see it, why not the Predator? I think Native people could be everywhere. And even before that, I had talked to somebody with the studio, and they had asked, you know, well, we don't know where natives fit in. So now when I walk in, I'm like, hi, I'm Jane Myers, I produce the Predator. Natives fit in at the top.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. And so would you say that you would pull inspiration from similar places also? Or is there different areas that you pull inspiration from?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I always just read and make sure that it's pretty, you know, that the inspiration is pretty true to whatever tribes they're trying, and geographically true. I think that's important because I think, you know, you have to get the majority of, I mean, you have to get native things right. It's such an open field right now because our culture has never been portrayed accurately. So this is the time to go in there and fix all of that. And if you see, I like how I do it in film, but look at Sterling Harjo. You know, he's the king of native television right now with Reservation Dogs, and he's not showing us, you know, in period, because you know, of course, Prey was in period in the 1700s, but he's showing us now, you know, as a living culture and as people that relate to each other, but people that still have their, you know, cultural traditions, tribal traditions. And I think that's really important. So I think right now is a really good turning point in media for Native people because we're all in the driver's seat. You know, Sterling is executive producer. He writes on his show. He directs on his show. You have me as a producer. You have Marvel that's coming out with Sidney Freeland, Keyshawn Bread. You have Native people that are in those positions. And until we actually take our seat at the table, we don't really have much of a say on how things are done. So I think that Sundance Institute has done a really good job of bringing in this generation of people that can produce, that can direct, that can write. Black Horse Low, amazing director, cinematographer. I mean, we have like a huge amount of people at this time, and I'm often asked, well, why is this different? It's different. Suzanne Harjo always says, television, or was it media, discovers Indians every 25 years. And while this may be true, we never had people that were the directors, the producers, the writers. So now we have that, and that's the difference that you're seeing. Because we can walk through that door, oh, can you produce this? Take a look at it. Yeah, I can produce this. This is what we need. Da, 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 da. Or can you direct this? We have those people in the places.
Awesome. No, definitely. And then also with you, Christian, I can repeat the question. There's a lot there, but what does your creative process look like when you're looking at different projects, whether it's film or with your motivational movement, I am, I can, I will, or where also do you pull inspiration from?
I think again, I just think it all comes from one place, and I think that's who we are as Native people and who we can be, our potential, while also showcasing our talents and our beauty of who we are. So anytime, there's a film or anywhere I go where I speak or whatever, it goes back to the importance of representing our people in a good way, doing the true stories, the authentic stories of who we are, and just basing everything off of our youth and the people who are coming up who see us, and like she said, seeing what we're capable of and what we can do. Like, yes, we can be in film. Yes, we can direct. Yes, we can act. Yes, we do have a spot at the table. And it's basically just showing our younger generations, that it's possible. That we can. That there is a seat at the table for us, and that they can do it.
Right? And then back to you, Jane. What is, when you consider the future of these narrative shifts and what these look like in your industry and providing those opportunities and opportunities to impact other narratives that are present, what does the future look like for you moving forward?
For me personally, or for everybody as Native people?
I guess both.
I think for Native people, it's just like unlimited. I think you'll see a big birth in Native TV shows, more Native films. I think you'll see us in big blockbuster films. I think you'll see us in big studio films. Like Prey. This is. I think that I think Prey is a good. And I keep referring back to Prey. I'm sorry, but. I do want to say that I came up through documentary, and I made a lot of documentaries, or not a lot, I made documentaries, and I want to say thanks to Shirley Stevie, if she's sitting down in the audience, because at Vision Maker Media, they always fostered, young filmmakers or new filmmakers into making really quality projects. So I think whatever we wish is what we can see. I think, I remember my grandfather always used to say, I wish they would get it right. I wish we could see this. I wish they would have language. Now it's no longer a wish because I can put that in there. We can have language, we can have song, we can have authentic, our narratives are authentic, our clothing is authentic. I think that we can have all of that. And maybe, this is the generation that'll be able to do that. So, and for me, I have projects coming up, so I don't think I'll be retiring anytime soon. But I have lots of great projects, and I think that having Red Dogs, having Prey, having Marvel, Echo, all of these films will just make a big boom for people in the industry, which is good for us because then our children will grow up seeing themselves. We never get to see ourselves in media. so they'll grow up and be able to see themselves, which is inspiring, very inspiring.
Definitely. And Christian, what does the future look like for you in terms of marriage moving forward or any projects, anything like that?
Well, like I said before, I think, the future is very, very, very bright. So right now I'm on Yellowstone, and it was huge for me. It's one of the biggest TV shows out right now. To have the director, because what it was the director was looking for an indigenous youth team to come in and learn, to come in and work and get a deeper feel of that big of a production. And through that process, even just for my family and my community, the whole Native community as a whole, to have a voice on set of of as one of us, as a Native American on set, to have that voice and that representation every day. I mean, just that alone to me was huge. Was everything, because they didn't have that before. They had Native American Affairs coordinator Mo. But to have a director assistant to be there, to have a voice, to give input, which what I do to represent, that's huge. But just the fact, that the director was wanting that, was thinking of that, was thinking of our people like that, is huge, and I feel like it's like a chain, Then one show, one production sees it, another production sees it. They're like, hey, let's make this a trend. Let's start involving these people. Let's start making them have a bigger voice than they already do. So for the future, like I said before, I feel like right now, as she said, we are moving we're not there. We are not there, but we are moving in the right direction. And it takes all of us. It doesn't just take people in film. It takes everybody, every Native voice, every Native person out there to continue to fight for that, through social media, through voices, through who we are as people. But I feel like I said, we're not there, but we are definitely on our way, and it's going to take every single one of us.
Definitely. Jane, how are we on time? Do you
I'm fine.
Okay.
I just have to go to set later, so I'm good.
Okay, all right. So I guess one of the last questions I have, and then we can open it up if the audience has questions, but any advice that you guys would give to someone looking to, whether it's in the community, in film, in terms of impacting narratives around them, what advice would you give?
I think it's really important that not only if you're a writer, you have all of your, have a slate of projects that you might possibly get, because you never know when you have that 5-minute elevator pitch. But I always tell people, just go to work. You need to work. If you want to be in the film industry, go to work in the film industry. It may not be the job that, like right now, I work as a producer, but I can tell you I have worked as everything on film. I have carried equipment. I have set up equipment. I've done catering. I think that it's important that that you're there, that you're present, because you may be the only Native person that this film crew sees all day, and you have a lot of important information. Whether someone's asking a question, or whether even if you see something that's kind of crazy, it's like, oh, so-and-so's, wearing a war bonnet. That's not true. Our people didn't do this, or, you have a voice to say something. So whether you just help out in a small way, but I think it's important that you build yourself as you build your career, because you'll be getting experiences that when you get into the position that you want to be in, all those experiences that you've lived through and worked through, they will all make an impact on, future decisions and future jobs that you have in the industry.
Thank you. And then back to you, Christian. Any advice that you would give to anybody looking to make impact in these narratives or in film?
I get that question all the time, from youth, from even adults. How can I get in? How do I start? What do I do? And I was the same way. I was like, how do I get my foot in the door? What do I do to get into this? And the first thing that I would say is to believe in yourself. Make that first decision to say, you know what, I'm gonna do this. You know, I can do this. I have a spot here. You know, whether it's acting, directing. You know, there's so many in the film industry. What I don't think a lot of people understand is that there's so many positions behind the camera, in front, and that there's a place for artists, in electric. You know, a lot of our people that know how to do these things, there is a spot for you in the film industry. There is a spot there. And I think, you know, another thing that we're working on is bringing in youth from these communities to kind of like a mentor, like a, you know, we're kind of mentoring them to come in and do those things. But, you know, to want to do that and then that's the whole thing right now is I think a lot of people don't understand, especially in our native communities, is that there is work for everybody. I mean, you know, there's so many positions, there's so many things that you can do to help to be a part of it. And talk to people, you know, talk to people, make connections, you know, reach out. I think that's a lot of times that's what we lack is reaching out to people, you know, reaching out and talking and connecting. You know, we're such in a social media world where we forget how to talk to people. We forget how to go up and introduce ourselves and say, hey, you know, what do you do? Where you come from? Well, this is what I want to do. You know, this is what interests me. And I think just that conversation alone, you know, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who may have that connection, who may, well, hey, you want to do this? Well, I know somebody who can do this, you know? So it's networking, getting out there and making it happen. So if you want to do that and you want to get in the industry, just go for it and do it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I guess at this time, I'd like to open it up if there's any questions or anyone would like to comments or. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Jillian. I'm from the Rosewood Sioux Tribe, Sichombi Lakota. So question for Christian. At what point, I'm sure coming on set for Yellowstone, you were probably nervous, maybe a bit intimidated. But at what point did you realize that you had something unique to bring to the set? You had something special and you recognized that your indigenous perspective was unique.
So going the first time being, you know, getting that opportunity or hearing about it, I was so, you know, it was like I was leaving home for 5 months. We filmed in Montana, and it was like, you know, just like leaving for college. You know, it was like how I've never left home more than that for 2 weeks, and it was 5 months going to a different state across the country. You know, and it was scary. It was definitely scary, but what I always think about is at the end of the day is my people, and it's overcoming that scaredness. It's overcoming that, you know, it's not about me. It's not about me personally. It's for my people, you know, like you said. So when I got there, and it became more of, you know, like you said, where did that? But it was funny because I felt that moment where it was like, wow, you know, like these, like I'm getting, because they start asking you questions. They're like, yo, where'd you get that beadwork? You know, your feathers that you're wearing. Where, you know, like people around set start asking you questions, and it's like the representation, the fact that I'm able to be here, and to let, you know, these high producers and directors and see me, you know, be right there, and then to have questions and ask, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, like Jane said, even being a cook, you know, the cooks, the electric, you know, it's like they're all just curious about our people, you know, and what we're doing, and it's like it's so beautiful because, you know, and then what if it's not just me? You know, what if we get another native to go to another show, all kinds of natives? You know, then it's just everybody's like becoming aware. But it was definitely moments where, you know, where there was people and crew coming up to me and asking me about my tribe and you know, just different things, and it was just beautiful. You know, it's beautiful. It's awesome. It is so beautiful.
Thank you for that question. Does anyone else have any comments, questions? Yep, yes, sir.
Bradley Hawk. What? There we go, the microphone. That was the first thing I was
Okay.
Let's make sure to get a mic for the audience. On the left side of it. That's all right. So access is where it's at. Right now, today, I'm not doing the live stream. Someone here just yesterday sat on the switcher and is switching this whole show. And they're doing this, got Stephanie on camera. We had a young woman, 14 years old, running the other camera. And one day they learned how to live switch and are live streaming the show. Tribes, Indian Collective, Thunder Valley, all these organizations need to look at media as part of their infrastructure. It's not a project. It's one of the best industries in the world for people to get training. I started a training program with Floyd Westman in Los Angeles. We put 250 kids through it. The very first student is an Emmy award-winning documentarian in Minneapolis, Leila Hale. You got this. What's not happening is tribes are not investing. You can't just do projects. You need to look at media as part of your survival. Kevin talked about we have to control the media thing and the influencers. You need to be the influencers. That's how you do it. That's what they're talking about. Hands on. So I challenge everybody in this room to go back to their tribes, go back to their organizations and say, pony up. Media's within our grasp, but it's not going to be there if we don't invest in it.
Thank you for that. Questions, sir?
Oh yeah, I'm Randy Hospital, ground control. Got a question for Jade. The thing with natives, they're bucky. They're really bucky, really reserved, really not so outspoken. So how would you go about, basically influence them, trying to get them into the environment? And then another question is when you come and tell a Lakota story here in the Great Black Hills, that'd be something great. There's a lot of stories here, a lot of great sets, a lot of people. And that's what I want to know is how do we get more Native actors involved with our area to get something done, produced, made? How would you go about it?
Did you hear that, Jane?
Yes, so the first part was Native people are quiet.
Yeah.
Is that what, okay.
Yeah, that they're bucky.
Some of them, not me, so, and not my children.
Yes.
But, no, I think that, sometimes you just have to, just step forward and, say things like I was talking about doing your elevator pitch, what do you want to say? Where do you want to be if you're next to an influential person and you have 5 minutes? That should always be something in your head, what are your top 3 things? What I would like to see? This, and this. Or, what would be great? This and this. You never know when you're, you have that situation. But also, yes, I think Black Hills has some great stories, and I would like to see, more Lakota stories. I think that begins with the writers, that are pitching projects, and they should, maybe write some TV shows, maybe write some treatments for a feature film, even, more documentaries. I mean, to me, there's just room in every sector. I can tell you in my career, I have done everything except for animation, and now I have a possible animation project on my slate that's with Taboo. But I have done everything. I have even done, short films. I've done documentary. I've done feature. I've done series. I even produced an opera, and that was kind of amazing because Chanupa Hanska Luger, whom maybe you know, is an amazing fine artist and visual artist, and he was the co-director. And he was like, "Jane, you should do this," and we did this in LA. And this is a space that you don't see Native people in. You don't see Native people in contemporary opera. And then here we were in LA producing, an opera, which is really amazing. So I think that any space that we can imagine ourselves in is a space that we can be in. And I guess that's my advice. And if you're bucky, you just kind of keep bucking in there and use that to get some attention, and then say, hey, this is what I think. Or even say something about what you saw. If you saw something that was on Lakotas and it was wrong, hey, I noticed, and I tell you, I watched recently Dances with Wolves, And I was watching, because now that I know how to do, language and you see the translations on there. If you watch Dances with Wolves and you watch the English translations, it's not really the translation of what's being said. But anyway, so I was kind of like, because I'm really kind of tuned to that since I had to do a language component recently.
Thank you for that. I guess last, I just wanted to give our speakers if they had any closing remarks or anything like that.
Let him go first, since I'm always go first.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, to all the organization for putting this together. You guys, this is your first year, and I think it's beautiful, and to keep going with it. I know it's going to get bigger and better every year. Amplifying our voices in media, and I'm so thankful, that you guys thought of me to be here, and just want to say thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yep.
I want to say the same. A big Wopala Tonka, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that I see a lot of new projects by your next media summit. Then I can just watch and see what amazing things Native people are doing. And this is only the beginning. It's the beginning for your conference, but it's also like people say, oh, this is a renaissance of natives in film. It's not even a renaissance because we never had this. So I think it's ours just to do what we want to with it and to make whatever impression of our culture on the world. So thank you.
And I just want to give a huge shout out real quick to Little Wound High School and Pine Ridge Girls School. You guys are awesome.
Thank you guys very much for attending, and again, thank you to our guests for making time in their very busy schedules. Thank you guys very much.
All right, let's give them a round of applause one more time, guys. Okay, so coming up next, we have Jessie Ren Counter. I know we said she was scheduled for the private dining room, but she will be in here. For those of you that want to listen in on Jessie Ren Counter, she'll be talking about indigenous storytelling, reclaiming our lifeways. And then we also have Melina Tubos, Gene Swallow, Brian Parker, Sheldon Starr, promoting culture, equity, and racial justice by uplifting Native artists. And that will be in the Black Hills Ballroom. Yeah, Jessie will be in here, and the room host for that is Debbie Phelps. Over at the Black Hills Ballroom, your room host will be Ray Janice, I believe. Just a reminder to everybody that we also still have those surveys. We would like ask everybody to fill out. We have one for MMIW. We got one for every session, and we also have an overall survey to help us for next year's media summit. So if you guys could kindly fill those out whenever you have time. And we want to give a shout out to our signifier partners real fast. Native Americans in Philanthropy, Indian Collective, Indian Country Today, and NAJA, which is Native American Journalists Association. And then this afternoon, all you youth, if you guys are fans of Mr. Spur Puyer, he will be performing this afternoon during our lunch right here in the Dakota Ballroom. So we do have another performer coming in this afternoon. Okay, and then everybody, if you guys would like pictures with Mr. Christian, we have the film sheet over here on the east side wall in the corner. So if you guys would like to take pictures, it's over here in the east wall around the corner, Christian. If they would like to take pictures with you. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and I'll start read the intro for Jessie here. So Jessie, taking a live Ren Counter, is a Hunkpapa Lakota from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. She has worked as a school counselor, serving hundreds of students for 15 years. Wow. She was named the Great Plains Emerging Tribal Writers Award winner for her first children's book, Peta Shows Misu the Light. Utilizing her teachings from her Lakota culture, combined with school counselor lens, she has published 4 children's books, with another being released in late 2022. Jessie was invited to be a guest speaker for Facebook and Instagram in the fall of 2021. Her passion is to help people remember their importance in life and to utilize their unique talents to create better communities for future generations to come. She is also a Lakota jingle dress dancer and loves to educate others about Lakota culture using storytelling combined with traditional song and dance. In 2021, Jessie was named a future legacy leader by the Spirit Aligned Leadership Program, an international organization. So let's give it up for Jessie Ren Counter, ladies and gentlemen. And while Jessie's making her way to the stage, I'd ask if you guys have questions to please use the microphone so our media guys can be able to hear it. Thank you very much. So I don't know, Deb, I don't know if you have to be up here, ask questions, or.
Okay, this is the mic here. All right. Looks like everybody went for a little break, but that's okay. Hey. So I'm betu washte midakyapi chante washe na betu zape, which hakpe tumpiwina Jesse taken a live Ren Counter amachapi. Hunk papa Lakota imataha. Good day, relatives. My Lakota name is Wechachbe Tumpiwi, which means woman who was born from the stars. My English name is Jessie. Maiden last name is Taken Alive, and I'm married to an amazing guy named Whitney Ren Counter. So my last name is Ren Counter, and I come from the Hunkpapa Lakota people. Grew up there on the Standing Rock Reservation all of my life, and today I make my home here in Rapid City with my husband and our beautiful daughters. So in the introduction, it was said that I worked as a school counselor for the past 15 years, and 13 of those years I worked here in the Rapid City School District. I was the only Native American school counselor here in the district for many years, and it was a blessing to be able to work with many children, including our Lakota children. And a lot of questions are asked about me as far as how I got into my authorship, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted to explain and share with you where I'm from, my background and such. So, I was asked by Mashke Tamia to come and share a little bit about my author journey, as well as the importance of incorporating our Lakota traditions into our stories and such. And so, like in the introduction said, I have 4 books out with one more actually hopefully into print by the end of the day today. But I want to share a little bit about where and why I'm coming from this standpoint. I'm actually not working as a school counselor anymore. I got really blessed into being able to share my author presentations, do many different cultural presentations and such with school districts throughout the United States as well. So I got really busy, and I thought it wasn't very fair to the children that I worked with to always be taking leave and such. And so I said, this is an opportunity for me to continue to write, continue to do my presentations and such. So we're going to get started. I don't have very many slides. I'm not much of a slide person, but I threw together a few slides. Many of us know that no matter what tribe we come from, historically, a lot of our teachings came from storytelling, from and amongst our Lakota people, sitting in that teepee and learning stories that have been passed down for generations, and talking about values and morals, about respect, about compassion, about honesty, about courage, and such many different values that we learned over the years. And we did this through storytelling, through our grandmas, our grandpas, our aunties, uncles, parents, and such. And as a as a Lakota person, as a little girl growing up on the reservation, my late mother, who passed away in December or November of 2020, I grew up with beautiful stories from her. I always say that she was the best storyteller out there. And I learned a lot of things from her, and she just was amazing. And so I kept that with me. And as I got older, to be in school age and such, I fell in love with writing as a first grader. I about, gosh, 35 years ago, when I say, because I was 6 years old in October, and my first grade teacher, I was on a reservation. Half of our classroom was Native students, half of our classroom was, non-Native students. And my teacher, non-Native teacher, she says, "All right, first graders, we're going to write a story. We're going to publish a book," is what she said. And in my little 6-year-old mind, I got so excited that, oh my goodness, I'm going to write a book and people are going to be able to check it out from the library. I was so excited. And she said, "We're going to make a cover." And here all this time, all she was talking about is that we were going to write in a book, and she was going to make like some wallpaper onto the cardboard for the cover. But I was so proud of that book, and it was just something simple about Halloween or something. And I fell in love with writing. I fell in love with the excitement of having people read my book. And I realized that, oh my gosh, I can share stories with people and they can read this and I can teach them. So that's where my love of writing came from, is all the way back then in first grade. I'll fast forward to my journey here as a school counselor here in the school district. At one time, my very first 5 years here in the district, I worked at a school where I was the only counselor to 650 kids, the biggest school in the district at the time, and probably had the most Native American students in there. And it was always stress, a stress mode, panic mode all the time, running around all the time. And in addition to being the counselor, one of your roles is to go into the classrooms and to share lessons that are going to help these students and such. And what I learned is that when I went into the classrooms, what worked with kids, with a classroom full of 20 plus kids, sometimes 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, was that I would tell stories. And I would tell stories when these children who were normally up, running around, couldn't sit still, I would tell these stories, and these children that couldn't sit still usually would sit still, and they would listen to the story. And so I realized that that was my outlet to get the lesson to them and to have them engaged and such. And of course, these kids would, all the way from kindergarten up to like fifth grade, they'd always say, "Oh, Mrs. Ren Counter, do you remember that story you told us when we were like first grade or second grade?" And I realized, like, that's what sticks with them. Like, you can go in and you can, do a lesson, share a lesson, but what sticks with someone is when you are able to share that story. Growing up, having my late father, the late Jay, taken alive, is a great spiritual teacher for myself and many other people. He used to tell us a little bit about how powerful our words are. He told us that, our breath is very sacred, he says. Our breath is sacred, that, when we have it, it means that we have life. And when we have life, we have that ability to help create things. So when we have that breath, when we're talking and we're speaking, and you think about it, when we speak to someone, we have to use our breath. And so he says, what comes out of our mouth is sacred. He says we can help uplift, or we can help, or the opposite, we can hurt people. He says our words are very powerful. And so when you think back about that, when our Lakota ancestors would story tell, they would share something very special, something very sacred. And so you connect that back to storytelling in the classroom. It's like that's what stuck with the kids. That's what their spirit was able to remember and such. So going through and doing stories as lessons and such throughout the years, a lot of these kids would go home and some of them would share the stories with their parents, or if they lived with their grandparents, and then they would tell them about the story that they learned. They'd be excited, and I would get phone calls and I'd get visits on my office door. They'd come in and they say, "Oh, so and so came home and they told me about this story that you." They came home and they shared the story that you told them. They're like, "Where can we get a copy of that book?" And I said, "Well, it's not a book. It's a story that I made up." And they're like, there was one particular grandpa that was raising his grandchildren, him and his wife, and he says, you need to make that into a book because my granddaughter is having a hard time. And he says, we tried talking to her, we tried sending her to counseling. He says, but something about the story has helped her and it's changed her. And I want my other grandchildren to hear this. Then was when I would realize the power of these stories and such. And he really encouraged me to start writing, to turn that story into a book. And so I was able to do that. And I realized, like, I can't. These stories that come and such, they're not just meant for me. They're meant to share and such. And so I turned it into a book, and I realized that it reaches so many more people that I may not ever be able to connect with, or may not even meet in this lifetime and such. So I started publishing books, and in fact, let's see, our screen here is not. Let's see. Oh, okay. We'll go without the PowerPoint here. That's okay. So going back to the whole talk about how. Oh, there it is. All right. So, oh, it didn't update the newest one. So here's 3 of the 4 books that I have out so far. That first book way on the left is called Peta Shows Me So the Light. And I want to talk a little bit about the power of these books and how these storytelling come, because so many people amongst our Lakota people have gifts. Some of us have the gift to sing, some of us have the gift to create art, beadwork, quill work, story tell, whatever it might be, dance and such. And I want to talk about utilizing those gifts because, we all have those beautiful gifts when we're born and such. And, I feel like when we are able to be open, a lot of these gifts come through. And this goes specifically for like this first book on the left called Peta Shows Me Through the Light. This is the book that was first published that the older grandfather had asked me to be able to share and to make into a book. This came as a result of children asking me that very difficult question of why people do hurtful things in this world. I think we can all tell ourselves that, hey, I've had that question too of why is so-and-so so mean? Why are they doing hurtful things? And I had that question come into my office amongst little kids from kindergarten up to 5th grade at that time. And they'd always ask, Mrs. Ren Counter, how come so-and-so is always bullying me? How come they're bullying everybody else? Another kids come in and asking, how come my daddy's always in jail? How come he can't stay and live with us? It's really difficult to explain to a first grader about that. Other questions, more difficult questions of, why is my loved one, whether it's my big brother, big sister, a parent, an aunt, uncle, how come they can't stop using drugs or drinking alcohol and such? Really difficult questions to ask. And so I had a really tough day one day, and of course, part of my role as a school counselor is that I say the toughest part is working with child protection services. And unfortunately, I got to know too many child protection service workers over the years, having to make sure that little children are safe when I knew they weren't safe. And one day there was a worker coming to pick up a little girl from school, and this little girl is really close with. And I knew that they were going to take her, so I stayed late till about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I waited with her. We colored and such, and I tried to share with her about, how she's going to be safe and such. And, the worker came and she took her. And of course, it was a really heart-wrenching moment for me in my career where she hung on to me and she cried and she says, Mrs. Ren Counter, she says, please don't let them take me. And, I had to hold back tears and such. So they took her. And I was like, oh my gosh, this work, why am I here? Like, why do I have to do this and be the person and such? So I called my husband and I went out to the Black Hills. My late father talked about how powerful our Black Hills are and how sacred they are. And he says, sis, he says, whenever you have a difficult time, he says, go out to those Black Hills and lay your tobacco down, say your prayers. He says, it's really beautiful there. So I did that day. Called my husband and I said, I'm going to go say some prayers. I said, I'll be home a little bit later. I went out to the Black Hills and, I asked for guidance with my work with these children and these difficult situations, that difficult question, to help these children understand of, how hard it is, those situations that they're in, but also to help them feel their power, their innocence, their sacredness and such. And a couple nights later, I was given a beautiful experience, a dream, where an old man came to me. And this was the beginning of my career where I'm at right now. He came to me and he asked me, first of all, he told me, he says, he said, it's really hard to hear our children crying and having them forget how special they are. He says they're forgetting their gifts and such. And he says, I want to share something with you. And he took me to like a outer space, basically. And it was so beautiful. And we got to see down on Mother Earth. And he asked me, he says, why don't you look around? He says, and tell me what you see. And so I says, well, I see a bunch of people. He says, they're standing with these bright, beautiful lights in them. And then I told him, I said, I see people. They're crouched, kneel to the ground with their heads down, and they don't have any lights. And he kind of smiled. And he kind of says, look closer once, Tagosha. So I looked again. And then, so I see these people that are crouched to the ground, and they have really dim lights. So I told him, I said, well, how come their lights are dim? And then he started telling me how when we're born, as we come onto this physical plane, how we're born and we all come from that same place. He says, we're all born with our beautiful gifts and such. And he says, we're so beautiful that when we're babies, people want to be around us. They want to hold us because that light in us, he says. And then sooner or later, as we get older, older children and such, people start to hurt us. We experience pain, we experience hurt, and that light starts to dim. So I said, so those people, I told him, I said, the people with the bright lights, I said, they've never really experienced a lot of pain. And he kind of chuckled again. And he says, no, he says, Takosha, he says, the only difference between the people with those bright lights and those dim lights, he says, is the people with the bright lights, he says, they've also been hurt. They've been sometimes even more hurt than the people with those dim lights. But he says the only difference is that these people with these bright lights, they made a choice. He says they made a choice to forgive those people who have hurt them. They made a choice to have compassion for those people around them. And he says they made a choice to remember how special they are and where we all come from and their gifts. And he said, and most importantly, he says they chose to love. He said that's the only difference between those people with those bright lights and those with those dim lights. But he says, watch what happens. He says, when those people with those bright lights come, and he says they help those with the dim lights. So I watched and we looked closely and we saw people with these bright, beautiful lights walk over and they start pulling, grabbing the arms of these people crouched to the ground, and they pull them up. And as they stood up, these people, their dim lights start to get brighter and brighter. And then as we watched everyone help up. And before we knew it, we saw the whole world was standing with people from all different cultures all over the world. They had bright, beautiful lights. And the world was so beautiful. And it just made this feeling come from the earth that was powerful. And I look at this old man and he says, there's not one person on earth down there that can save the whole world. He says, but all it takes is a simple act of kindness. Sometimes it takes sharing a smile. Sometimes it takes sharing a meal, giving someone food or water, helping those who are less fortunate at the time. And I look at them and he's crying, and I'm like, "Why are you crying?" And he had tears coming up from both eyes. And he says, I cry because there's a lot of children hurting down there. He says, I hear them, some of them hurting so much that they don't want to be there anymore. And others He says they forget how special they are. And when we looked earlier, backtracking a little bit here, but when we looked earlier, this is where I saw a lot of these children who were crying and who were hurting. A lot of their parents who were addicted to drugs, the mom that was like in jail and such. These were the ones with dim lights, and it helped me realize that you know they have hurts. They have a lot of trauma, a lot of hurts and such. But he talked about, how not only was he sad, but he says, I want you to share this with those children. He says, as many children, and help them, remind them of how beautiful they are, that, as long as they can, they have the power to help make that world a better place. And this experience, this dream I had was so powerful that it was life changing for me. And it helped me with my work with these children. And so the next morning when I woke up, I didn't share this dream with my husband because it was so powerful. I was just thinking, going throughout my morning routine, and I was brushing my teeth. And my little girl at the time, she was 6 years old. She's now 16 years old, but she was 6 years old at the time, and she was in the shower and she was singing. And then she stopped singing. She says, "Mommy," she says, "did you know we all have a light in us?" And I was like, "What?" And I stopped brushing my teeth and I went over to the shower to pull the shower curtain open. And I was like, "Who told you that, babe?" And she goes, "No one." She goes, "I just know." And so she says, what makes her light shine brighter is, she says, things that we're good at. She's like, for me, I'm a really good singer. And she is. She has a beautiful voice. She said, I'm a really good singer. So when I sing, she said, it helps my light become brighter. And by then I'm like crying, right? I'm crying and I realize like, oh my gosh, this message, this dream that I had is big. It's like, it's real. It's something that actually happened. And so I shared this story, with as many children, like I said, at school, at work, and such. And this is the story that this grandpa, this little girl's grandpa, asked me to make into a book. And that's how I started my author journey. And I realized that being able to share our stories like this, when we're open channels, when we're storytellers, you have that gift to dream and such, that those are meant for other people as well too. Getting back to who we used to be is sharing our stories, telling the children stories, helping them learn about compassion, about forgiveness, about respect, about truth and such. That's who we've always been. And I realized growing up as a little girl that there was not very many stories where I could relate to as a little kid in elementary. A lot of the stories, some of my favorite used to be by Paul Goebel, about like Ikdomi and such. And I was like, oh, cool, we get to read about Ikdomi today in class from my non-native teacher and such. But the thing is, like, that's not how I looked, That's how maybe my ancestors looked and how my ancestors lived, but I could never really find something where it related to me, a character that looked like me. And so as I grew older, the only thing that I connected with right away was my favorite story as a young girl was Water Lily, and being enticed by the story and could not put that book down and reread it over and over, finding out that the author was Native. I was like, oh my gosh, we can tell our own stories. And then fast forwarding to my role as a school counselor, realizing that, hey, we need more Native books out there to share these lessons with our children. Why not make books? Because children in school are going to have to read anyway. They have to read, that's their homework, they're reading in school. Why not bring some of our cultural teachings, our values, and put them into these books with characters that look like them? And that's what my books have, is they're characters that look like our Native children, because I want our children to be able to relate, to be able to feel excited, to have that connection, because when we have that connection, it helps us feel a little bit better about reading. It gets us more excited, and it helps instill those lessons. Like I said, going back to how sacred our words are and such, it helps not only form the brain, but it connects with our spirit as well too. So I wanted to put in there a couple. Here's Joseph Marshall. I love Joseph Marshall. I got to sit with him a couple times at some South Dakota Festival books and kind of pick his brain and such. And Joseph has been doing this for years, and he's paved the path for so many writers like myself. But also, we have this we are water protectors. I love this book because it was the number one children's book out there for weeks last year, and the author is native, and this all comes from teachings from our native culture. And I realized, like, oh my goodness, look at how many millions of children and their parents and their teachers have read this story of a little girl who's native, that looks like someone like us. And so these are big influencers for me. There's authors out there, and I always like to encourage people who have our native people, our indigenous people, who have that dream, that goal to want to publish their own books, to do it, because it is like if I'm rewinding back to my place of where I was really scared to, like, I don't think I can be an author. I don't know if I can be an author. I don't know, what to do. Will people even read my stuff? There's so many self-doubts that we have. But I want to encourage those who are out there who want to publish their own books to do it, because we have so many stories as Native people, as Lakota people, to share with our children, to get them excited, to realize, like, hey, that person, that author looks like me. Hey, that character in that book looks like me. So I wanted to always share that and encourage people. So we went back. I'm kind of jumping all over here because my slideshow was kind of off, but that's okay. So we started off, like I said, we went from storytelling and like our teepees and such to being in classroom settings. This is where we are today, and we're sitting in desks or at tables and such, and we're learning. And most of the time, it's always like students sitting all the time and listening to someone speak and such. But that's kind of where a lot of classrooms are. A lot of teachers are getting back to realizing that teaching and learning and such happens in a more in a better way when we sit in a circle together and we share and such. We share ideas, so that way there's not just one person in charge. We're all learners. I teach a high school class for 4 years here in the district, and that's why I would always set my classroom up as in a circle to help kids or students, learn and say, hey, we're all learners here. I'm a learner as well too. You guys are teachers as well too. And so when we would do this, it helped them realize that they would get really creative and such. So, I feel like we're going back to our teachings, that we're going back to how it should be and such. So Thunder's hair, when I talk about Thunder's hair, this in the middle here came as a result of a lot of little boys coming into my office over the years, a lot of our native children, not just Lakota, but we have some of our neighboring tribes here, like our Northern Cheyenne and such. We have a lot of our native kids that come here in the district. And of course, they have long hair, long, beautiful hair. They wear it in a braid or a ponytail or whatever. And over the years, I've had dozens of little boys come in my office, and they would tell me, they would be crying. They're like, Mrs. Ren Counter, I just want to cut my hair. Like, so-and-so was pulling my hair today, and they called me a girl, and I'm just tired of this. And my mom and dad or my grandparents, they won't let me cut my hair. And I always used to think, man, I wish there was a story. I wish there was a book out there to help encourage these little boys and empower them of how special their hair is, to teach them and remind them, but also to educate their peers, their classmates, whether they're Lakota or non-Lakota or whatever, and their teachers, about the power of our hair. And so this came out in late 2020, Thunder's hair. And for the past year or so, it's kind of picked up some momentum, because I realized that it's not just happening at our non-native schools, that it also happens at our reservation schools as well too, about the teasing, the pulling of the hair, the bullying and such. And so it not just addresses the educational importance of our hair as Native people, but it also touches the aspect of being proud of who you are, embracing your uniqueness. That's our power as well too. And so that's kind of where that one came from. That third one, We Are All Related, comes from a request from so many people to have a book out there for the little babies, the preschoolers, the 3-year-olds and such. And so this is, we all know about Midako. In Lakota Hunkpapa people, our dialect is a little bit different. You know, we always say Midako ye owase. Our Oglala relatives, you say Midako ye oyase. Same meaning, right? So I wanted to just reiterate that teaching to little kids. And as little kids, we already know we come from that beautiful place of too beautiful for words when we enter this world. And I feel like we already know about Midako Ye Awase. We already have that connection to other people, to no matter our skin color, our culture, our language. We already have that connection to Uchimaka, to the animals, the plant nation, and such. And as we grow older, we start getting introduced into like technology. We start learning how to fear what is different from ourselves, as far as like other kids and such. We start forgetting that. And so I wanted to make this book called We Are All Related to help remind children that every living thing is a relative of ours. And as Lakota people, we've known that for thousands of years, that we treat everything as a relative. My dad's mentor, my late father's mentor, was Pidaka Yuhamani, Pete Ketch's senior. And he taught my father, my uncles, a lot about the ceremonies and our spirituality. So a lot of these teachings actually come from him. And, my dad used to tell us a story about how Pete used to tell him that everything, even the tiniest beetle, has a purpose. And so even the ant that, my dad would tell us, don't be stepping on those ants. And he would share that story with us because he says that ant has a purpose as well too. So you don't go and you don't step on those. So what's that? Okay. So I wanted to put that teaching to help remind children about that, because in that book it talks about that as well too, how every living thing is our relative, that we connect to it as a relative. So that's that. I have another book. I'll grab it here real quick. I'm sorry, I don't know why it didn't show up in there. This one's called Rainbows in December. This one came out, and this one touches a difficult topic. It talks about grief, and I think that we all experience that. And if we have not experienced it yet, we're going to experience it in our life. And this came about as a result of the pandemic. I think because of the pandemic, we all really experienced a lot of hardships. And one of those big hardships is that we experience losing loved ones. Maybe it was a parent or grandparent or a neighbor, someone in our community that we lost due to COVID. And I realized as a school counselor that, not only is our community's mourning, but our whole world is mourning. And I'd have little kids come into my office in mourning, and they would talk about how they were sad because they lost a relative or so. And with that, I was experiencing my own grief as well too, losing both my parents to COVID as well too. And I realized that, we live in a society where it's so fast paced that it's like, after we bury a loved one, we're expected to go back to school. We're expected to go back to work like right away. And it's like, that's not how it's meant to be. Traditionally, we used to have protocol. We still have our ceremonies, but not everyone gets to experience that. We have these ceremonies, and we get to have that year of mourning for our loved one. And because we don't have that, we're really struggling today. Have, like in my case, burying both my parents in a double burial, and then the next week I had to be back at work helping students and such. And I realized that, oh my goodness, this grief is really heavy. And I realized that not only was I experiencing this grief, but my own children were experiencing this grief. And as a parent, I kind of was like, I got to do better. I need to help my children. Like, gosh, if I'm struggling, how many other people are struggling with their grief as adults? And how many little kids are struggling? Well, I know there's a lot of little kids struggling because I worked with them in my office. And so I said, I need to write a book that addresses grief and helps normalize it so we can talk about it again, because that's something that's going to happen. We're all going to experience that if we haven't already. Some of us have experienced it more than others and such. And so I wrote this book called Rainbows in December. I wrote this book called Rainbows in December. And this book, it follows the story of a little girl whose father passes away. And, she has a grandma that's there in the story that kind of is really close to her. And she teaches her, she's kind of preparing her and such, and helps her before, during, and even after that transition of her father passing away. And this little girl experiences many different emotions, of all the emotions we experience, of shock, of anger, of sadness, of depression, and finally acceptance and such. But it incorporates a lot of our teachings as Lakota people. And so, it's not my most popular book because I think a lot of people don't like to talk about grief, but I hope that people utilize it to help the children, because you think about it, our children also experience that grief as well too, and they don't know what to do with it, they don't know how to handle it. And so that's why we have children that are what you say, acting up in class, right? And I always used to get the emails or the phone calls from the teachers in the classroom. They say, Mrs. Ren Counter, can you come and get so and so? I know they're flipping desks in the classroom, and I knew already, like, oh yeah, they lost their dad last month. In my mind as a school counselor, and then amongst with their teachings as Lakota, they lost their dad last year, or last month and such. And so, sure enough, we get to talk, and that's what comes up, and they release those tears and such. But it's because we don't pause to stop, and we don't pause to take care of that grief. There might not have been anyone at home available to share with them and help process that grief, because as adults, we're still trying to process that ourselves. So that's kind of where this fourth book is coming from, called Rainbows in December. The title, Rainbows in December, came because, after burying my parents in a double burial in December, in a cold, cold winter, bitter cold, it was on the Standing Rock Reservation up on the North Dakota side. After we buried them, we were driving home, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to go home to mom and dad's and stay warm. And then it hit me, as like, ooh, like boom, that like realization, like, wait, I'm going home, but I'm going home to their house, but it's an empty home. And then again, the grief hits, and I'm sitting there and I'm sobbing. And then all across the pasture off to the west, where the sun is setting, a great big rainbow appears. And I'm like, that's my dad. There's an inside story between me and my dad since I was a little girl, and our connection about rainbows. And so I was like, wow, like, who gets a rainbow in December? And I'm like, that's my dad showing me that, hey, he's still here. We're still connected. I just can't see him, but that's his sign. So that's kind of where this title comes from, Rainbows in December. So, but I wanna be able to open it up to questions these last 15 minutes or so, from questions from the crowd. I think Debbie's our moderator here. If you guys have questions about any of the books, the journey of, we have a question back there. I think we have anything that we have talked about today.
Hello. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Where did you come? I come from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I'm just listening to what you were talking about. I was going to ask if you had any books for sale.
I do. I'll have to. I'm supposed to have a table set up, I think, but I do have books. I can bring them back this afternoon and such, and set up somewhere out here. I do have books for sale. If I somehow miss you, you can find all my books on two different places. One, I have a website. I thought, this slideshow that's up here is not the current one, but I have maybe Tamia can put that up there, my website address, a website called jessierencounter.com. You can order from there. You can get your own signed copies, or you can email on there for like a bulk of books for school districts and such. And if you don't want to go that route, they're always available on Amazon online. So, yeah, thank you.
What has been your biggest challenges or obstacles in your process of writing, creating?
Whew, okay, so the writing part itself is actually really easy. I allow myself to be in a space where I literally do like smudge myself off and stuff before I write, when I sit down, because I always like to say a prayer and say okay, all right, I'm ready. I'll be I'm your hands, I'm your mind and such. That process itself is easy. The process of getting it. The first book was done with a hybrid publisher, the very first book, and that was the hardest part, was learning how do I even become a published author. And I sat for hours doing my own research and finding out what's the best way to go. Do I go with a traditional publisher? Do I self-publish? And I did a hybrid publisher, which is someone who was right there in the middle for that first book. And then I realized, I kind of want to have more rights to my books. And so my last three books that last three books that I published are self-published books. That I'll tell you, that was the hardest part, was sitting and doing my research on how to self-publish a book. I cried literally many tears, hours and such, frustrated, thinking like, is this even worth it? I don't know how many times I gave up on Thunder's hair, but I'm glad I didn't. But that was the hardest part. What I really hope to do is to be able to set up some online like Zoom classes for people who want to be able to learn how to publish their own books. So to save them the tears, to save them the hours of like researching and such, and to be able to help teach, because I really do want more Indigenous writers and authors from many different tribes, because I can only represent like our Lakota teachings. Again, like each band is different though as well too, but I want more Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island to write for their communities and such, to have that be a normal thing. And I feel like it's slowly getting there. I feel like right now is the opportunity to do it, because I feel like our Native people are coming up. We're gaining momentum in all different aspects, in acting and TV shows and all kinds of things, singing and such. Right now, it's like boom, it's hot right now. So if you have the opportunity to sit down and write what you're hoping to write, do it. There's people that have already done the work for you. Reach out to people and ask. So good question though. Thank you.
I want to say good morning to you,
Good morning.
and that I feel that you have a very strong mind, and you have a good heart, and you're putting all this together. And I, too, have been told that I possess those tools, and you didn't tell me about anything else that I possess. I think that was because they just didn't know me, and so they did the best out of what they saw for that period of time. But so anyway, what I wanted to know is, when you were talking about the deaths of people when their grandchildren are aware of it, but they don't talk about it, and they just want to play, and I think as they grow, then they're forgetting about all of that they had when their grandparents were alive and that kind of thing. And I myself did not be raised that way, and so I was always, told about how the people that I love so much, my grandfather and my grandmother, that when they passed away, it was like, I'll see them later. That's what my feeling was because I was so young. And so anyway, my question, I don't want to take too much time, but my question is that, do you think that it is okay to um, tell the little ones about what happened in I always wondered that. Haven't yet come to a situation as that since that time when I was growing. And I always wish that I would have known where they went because they were never present. And I was present around them so much. They were present around me, so much of the time before they passed. And so it was first the grandfather passed and then the grandmother. But, and then I would always see them crying, see her crying. And I always thought that she was hurt because that's what she told me. And I always, when hurt, she didn't say it was what it was for real, in her real life. And everybody's, that was related to grandma. That was our real life, but then my thing was always, as I grew older, that why did I see her crying so, and then when I would go in and I would always hug her and ask her where she got her boyas, how have you been behaving and things that you got here hurt like this. And so anyway, just saying things like that, kind of stay, I hear them, I heard them, and then, so then when they were growing up and they lost my own kids, my own children, they lost their grandmother, one of the grandmothers that they were so close and involved with. And it was really hard for them to understand that she was gone and going to be gone, but only in her presence. And they, that was all they needed, and that was all I told. But, like in some of the things that when I hear or read some stories that are, like that, historical time, when I go to find information, things they don't ever mention, the hardship or the quality of the life, and that because of that quality of the life, they're going to be doing very well in heaven, that kind of thing. I learned that in the Bible and in the church because we were like by, we had the Lakota way of belief in the Christian way of belief, and we never put one or the other down. Maybe we just didn't believe in it, but we never dissed them in the way that was the thing that I was trying to train my own children. So I was just wondering, is that a good way, to
It's a good question.
talk to them?
Right.
What is
I'll share with you from my experience as a Lakota school counselor and such, working with all different diverse backgrounds of students. If these children, if they're not told, what I've seen is that eventually they start questioning of like what you said, like where did they go and such. Most of the time, though, I've had students where they were told that, but they were not talked to about it at home. They weren't helped with that grief and such. And so, like I said, that those behaviors would come out in the classrooms, of not being able to concentrate, maybe coming out as some aggression and such. And so I always think it's always best, and I've had these conversations with parents, to sit down and share with your child, and explain to them whatever your belief is, your family's belief is, because I can't tell, families, because everybody has different beliefs and such. But what I wanted to share with is like our teachings, from what we know of as Lakota people, what happens after, our physical bodies pass and such, that we still have that connection to them, because that helps children kind of have that hope that, like, hey, they're not gone forever, and it doesn't leave that sense of emptiness, because eventually, like I said, these children are going to grow up and they're going to experience grief anyway. So we want to teach them that it's okay to cry, it's okay to remember them, but it's also, though, too, once you're done grieving and such, it's also okay to miss them but still enjoy your life as well, to still go on and still utilize your gifts and serve your purpose here, in this physical realm and such. So it's always best to, what I've seen as a school counselor over the years, is to share and be honest with the kids, because they're going to experience it sometime later on down the road, and that way it'll help them as well. So thank you for that question. It's a good question.
Any more questions? I just want to say you're a very good storyteller, not just in your books, but in person as well.
Thank you.
I have two questions. How has your projects and your books impacted non-Indigenous people? In what ways? And then my second question is, do you have any current projects that you're working on now?
Okay, good question. That first one, I've had my book, that first book, Peta Shows Me to the Light. Our school district here in Rapid City, they purchased the book for all third, fourth, and fifth graders, because they like the book so much, and they realize, like, oh great, let's have a Lakota character in there, but also let's teach this universal message of, like, compassion, forgiveness, helping other people and such. And so it's coming from our traditional, like, teachings and knowledge of, like, having compassion and forgiveness and all that stuff, and being kind to other people, but it's showcasing, like, hey, this story follows a Native kid, a little boy, in today's society. And so it helps realize, like, hey, Native kids can be characters in stories as well too, and it can still be a story that I love. I've had children, from both. I've worked at two different elementaries, at the same time for the past 3 years, and I've had little non-Native kids say, "Mrs. Ren Counter, this book is my favorite book. I like to read it at night," and I'll have their parents tell me as well too that they love their book, love that book as well too. So I feel like it's kind of opened up their eyes to realize, like, hey, Native people can be the main character in these stories that we love. That second question of, like, upcoming projects, that's a question I get asked all the time. In fact, I just got an email before I came here to the Holiday Inn about my next book that's going to be in print. It's actually a sequel to that very first book called Peta Shows Me to the Light. Peta is a character, the old man character that I made in a book, the old man that came to me. And he comes back and he helps, teach a little girl who has anxiety. Whew, that's a big one today, anxiety, especially with the pandemic. And as a school counselor, I've seen panic attacks rise and anxiety rise like no other in the past couple of years. And I believe it's because I think we felt everything, as a whole here on earth. Everything, tension went up, homes where there was stress for money, there was stress for whatever it might be. It trickles down to the kids. And these kids are experiencing full-blown panic attacks and not knowing what's happening, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm dying. And so I realized, like, oh, these kids need they need to learn about feelings. They need to learn about just releasing and allowing and such. So that next book is hopefully will be in print, soon, be sent off to the printer. But that's called Peta Shows Kea Energy. Talks about our energy and how our feelings are connected and such. Another project that I'm just starting, I'm collaborating with a scientist here from the School of Mines, where we're collaborating, and I can't share too much on it without giving away, but it's it talks about the connection between some of our cultural teachings as Lakota as well as science, how they're connected and how they're things that we've known for centuries as Native people about certain things in our culture that the scientists are just now discovering, I guess. So for them, they're like, oh, this is like brand new, and we're like, no, this has been in our culture for many years. But I'm glad that you guys can finally validate this with your science findings and your research and such. That's the next children's books. I do have a chapter book I'm working on right now. This chapter book it's for our Native women to help us heal and such. And this chapter book comes from kind of somewhere else, I guess you can say. It's not my idea. It's something that came to me kind of in a beautiful experience. So I'm writing that. It's taken a little bit longer because it energizes but drains me, I guess you can say. But I'm really excited because like I said, I'm not working as a school counselor anymore. So during the day, I just sit and I write and I write and I write. So those are some upcoming projects that I have right now.
Other questions? I have a question for Jesse.
Okay.
I asked Tiffany a long time ago that I wanted you to write a book about Bigger and Sky, my two dogs.
Oh, so we got a request for a dog here. Awesome. Well, I think that is our time, 11:10. So I want to say thank you, Palamaye, for you guys coming to listening to me share some of this. And I hope that again, one last thing, reiterate that if you have that goal, that dream to write, to publish a book, don't be scared because there's people that need those stories that you're sitting there scared upon. Just do it, right? As Nike says, just do it. Hey, so thank you. Have a good day.
Huh? How about another round of applause for Jesse Ren Counter? You know, we're very, very proud of you, Jesse. Very, very happy for you. You know, she and I, she is a big inspiration to me personally. You know, the books that she writes, the high school and the elementary school that I work at, we utilize all her books in the elementary K through fifth grade. And so, Jesse, again, thank you for putting all of that out there for all of us and for our students and our children. Well, Headlet Mitakuyapi, at this time, we're going to take a short break. So I encourage you, get some coffee, maybe some juice, maybe some lemonade, maybe grab a snack, something. And we're going to meet back in here in 10 minutes at 11:20 to go through the War Pony panel. You do not want to miss that. And right after that, Spur Puyer will be here. It's going to be a beautiful lunch. So friends and relatives, again, feel free to move about, feel free to stretch, to kind of walk around, mingle, network, talk with each other, share all those rugged res jokes, and we'll meet back here at about 11:20. And I want to give shout outs to our Wakpetuan Dakota relatives from Wapayton, Saskatchewan. Welcome, relatives. Welcome. And also tonight, around 7 o'clock, there's going to be a hand drum contest, maybe a little mini round dance. So you do not want to miss. Again, friends and relatives, that is this evening. And again, we are going to gather back in here in about 6 or 7 minutes, 11:20-ish. And we're going to jump into the War Pony panel. And Spur Puyer is in the house for the luncheon live performance while we have lunch. So get on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever it is you use to communicate, and get all your friends and relatives on over here.
Okay, let's try. Of course, now you got a break in it. What is this? You have enough feet to get there?
No, I need one more extension. You got one more? I think I might have one.
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
No, we can move it.
He said this is fine if this is here, but just that table would get me out of the way.
Yeah, that's no problem. Is it working?
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Okay, let me get this cord. Sorry. I'm going to get a little more of that.
Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Okay, she's going to like that better.
Testing, microphone check 1. Again, friends and relatives, we are on a quick, little tiny intermission. Tiny, small. Inach ni ashkampik todo. Quickly. Around about 2 minutes or so, we're going to get rocking and rolling. So again, after you get stretched out, moved around, talking a little, mingling, after you got your pajuta sapa, your wakaliapi, whatever it is, how you say that, your coffee, your juice, your water, your snacks, your fruit. And if you're like me, like I told you this morning, donuts. Donuts is the way to go. Anyway, we're going to be coming back in here shortly. So again, friends and relatives, start gathering around, start getting your friends in here, your relatives. And again, we're going to be welcoming the War Pony panel, an independent film from right here in the area. We're all very grateful to be here in the lands of our Lakota relatives, in the heart of Ocheti Shakoi country, the Pahasapa, the Chesapa, the Witapaha, however it is you describe that. It's a very beautiful time here. Many things going on. All kinds of meetings, all kinds of gatherings, and then the most rockinest powwow in all the land kicks off tomorrow night. Yeah. I heard Northern Cree is en route. Cree Confeds are on the way. War Paint is coming. Motown is coming. I mean, dude, the drums that are en route here for this weekend are going to be rocking and rolling. Cree Confeds be here tonight. Northern Cree. So again, Hochoka's in the house. Again, just announcing that tonight, around 7 p.m., after dinner and after our live performance, there is a hand drum contest. $1,000, first place. And I believe there's 4 places. So again, make sure you get on the horn and let your friends and relatives know. All those Facebook contacts, put it up there. First place, $1,000. Second place, $750. Third place, $500. And fourth place, 350 frog skins. You want to make sure to be here tonight, 7 p.m. sharp. Hand drum contest, 1 man, 2 man, up to 3 man. And then a little mini round dance going to happen. Well, who knows? There's nothing little about when natives gather. This whole room's probably going to be packed. And the round dance will happen right here tonight. So again, friends and relatives, start gathering back up. And just an announcement. Again, just an announcement tonight, live at 5 p.m., none other than the Fawn Wood. She's going to be here performing tonight, singing and sharing words and thoughts and all kinds of stuff with us. And then she's going to be rocking and rolling. So make sure you're here tonight at 5 p.m. sharp. So just invite them all up to the stage. I have their names on here, yeah. Again, friends and relatives, please make your way back on in here as we're going to get started in about T-minus 30 seconds. We're going to be welcoming the War Pony panel on up here. Ren Counter is going to be handling all the moderation for us. And so again, friends and relatives, start coming back over here. Come in and take a seat. Come in and take a seat. You know, friends and relatives, at this time, we've been having a very beautiful gathering here since yesterday, and it's only getting more beautifuler. Is that even a word? Beautifuler. Well, anyway, it's a res word now. Beautifuler, right? As each presentation comes, it's more and more. And I was just telling my kura over there, Hochoka, I was just telling him that the energy that's pulsing here right now is very beautiful. I know you all feel it because we all feel it. And so at this time, friends and relatives, we're going to be turning this on over here to the War Pony panel. And please help me welcome to the stage Ladanian Crazy Thunder, Wilma Koloff, Aona Red Bear, and Pte Chantewi. You know what's really awesome about this is an independent film with all actors from right here. Our people are doing it and they're making it happen. And it's very beautiful to hear. It's very inspiring. And at this time, another round of applause for the War Pony panel.
Mitakiapi, Chantiwashena Pechuzapie, Oyate Weyokewi Imachiapie. Lynn Cooney, Deputy Director at Thunder Valley CDC. Welcome all of you today. But a special welcome to, we have Wilma Kohoff, we have Pte Chantewi Poor Bear, Iona Red Bear, and Ladanian Crazy Thunder. Hi, Toshka. Good. We're really excited to have this panel here. And so they worked on a movie, a major production here called War Pony. And so I'm just going to do a brief overview about War Pony. War Pony follows the interlocking story of two Lakota boys growing up on the Pioneer Reservation. At 23, Bill just wants to make something of himself. Whether it's siphoning gas, delivering goods, or breeding poodles, he is determined to hustle his way to the American dream. Meanwhile, 12-year-old Mato can't wait to become a man. Desperate for approval from his young father, a series of impulsive decisions turns Mato's life upside down, and he finds himself unequipped to deal with the harsh realities of the adult world. Bound by their shared search for belonging, each of the boys grapple with identity, family, and loss as they navigate their unique paths to manhood. So that's a brief summary about what War Pony is, the movie. And we're working really hard to try and get the screening here. We weren't able to do that, but we are looking to partner with War Pony and premiere that hopefully at Thunder Valley, or screen it at Thunder Valley CDC in the future. So with that, I just want to open it up to each of you, and you can kind of tell your part that you played or that you worked on in the movie.
I played the part of Mama D, Lily's mother.
Yeah, that's her part.
My name is Buffalo Heart Woman. Most of you know me as Babe for Hair. That's my nickname that I'm trying to get away from. It's not working. But I am the executive producer for War Pony, and I'm happy to be here today, and I'm happy to see all of you as well.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Boya Kelly. I'm right there, and I play the part of Anthony. Hi, I'm Danny Crazy and I play the part of
Thank you. Oh, thank you guys so much. Sorry, wake everybody up there. So the first question is, can you tell us about how this movie came to fruition? Where was its roots, and how did it come to production in 2019, right? Is when the production started. So can you tell us a little bit about how it came to fruition?
Actually, the movie itself wasn't supposed to be a movie. It was a group of friends, mainly Billy and oh my God, my mind's blank. Frank. Billy and Frank. So Billy and Frank they were, they were extras in another movie, and they ended up meeting up with Riley and Dina, who are the directors of War Pony. And while they were extras in that movie, they started a friendship kind of started with them. And so they invited them to the reservation, and they kind of start messing around, writing scripts. That probably went on for about a year or so. And they're like, hey, we got something here. This could really be a movie. And so they started turning it into an actual script when they were sharing their life stories. And so at one point, maybe three years in, I came in. And so Tina and Riley, they said, we got a movie going here. It's a script. What should we do? So for me, it's real important for me to involve community, our elders. It's real important to honor our young people and their voice. And so what I did was I took them and we picked 4 elders from 4 communities, and we went and we obagi, we offered them tobacco. And both the directors, they sat with the elders and they asked them, they told them how this came to be, how they became friends with the young people, and how the story started shifting into a script. And they asked, is this appropriate? Is this okay? Can we come into your community? Can we come into your nation? And can we make this into a movie? And so the elders, they all said yes. They all agreed. And then, so that's really where it started. From there, we went to Kitchwa, the Black Hills, and we offered prayer stuff there. We all stood up there and prayed. And so, for me, watching the movie come into the light, it's real beautiful because it was all done through prayer. And it was all done through following our protocols as Indigenous people. So that's how I feel about that one.
Thank you. I think that's really important that Lakota Lifeways and Protocol were followed because you guys did make the movie in Oglala homelands, correct? The whole movie was filmed in Oglala homelands, and was the cast mostly Oglala?
Yeah, so what's really interesting about this film is that every single actor and actress was their first time acting. And so we brought in professionals that did trainings with them and helped them to be confident in their role. And maybe, I don't know, do you want to speak a little bit about the professional training you received?
She was quite entertaining as well. And she guided us really good. These little guys too, to our place. It has to be a certain way, that feeling, that emotion behind what the script, and over and over and over. And I even got told I have to be more big stuff. Yeah. Over and over and over. But it very, it's it really does, and I was so excited to finally get to see the whole thing in full effect. And I enjoyed it. Really, I didn't have to. You
Nice.
never know what that's going to be for a person.
Right.
And I also feel like Latania, how old was you when we first started training?
I just turned
13? Okay. And how old are you now?
I'm 15.
Okay. So that's pretty young to You know, and his group of friends and their part in the movie, they were just, when you see the movie, you'll see they're naturals. They're naturals at acting. So it was really good. How about you, Mel?
When they asked me, I was like, act in a movie? What kind of movie? And so they explained it to me, so I said, no, I don't want to. And they said, come on, just try it. So it actually happened in my bedroom when they were training me, and I had to change my voice from mean to happy to, I just had to do with my voice all kinds of different. And it was really crazy because I was getting frustrated. And I told them, I don't want to do this. I have to keep doing the same script over and over and over. They said, well, we have to get it perfect. So it was really a good experience, and I'm happy I did it. Because when I watched myself, it actually made me cry.
Wow.
When I see myself in the movie, I mean, I was like, wow. So it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's really nice.
Thank you for that. And I think, that maybe being an actor or actress might seem easy at first, but it's obviously a lot of hard work. It is. And I think, as Lakota people, we inherently have a lot of these traits that can't be taught or can't be coached. And so, how did you guys kind of intertwine your own experiences and then the professional coaching to be able to really feel like your performance was where it needed to be?
Well, I don't know how I felt, but I know it was really hard uh, to get to the point where they wanted me to be from the way I felt that I should, act or say the words or whatever it was. And it was really challenging, but once it was done and they let you hear it back, it was, like, wow, you actually did this. So it is a very challenging thing to be in a movie because it does take a lot out of you, and it does make you really, really change who you are in a way. That's the way I felt.
I think for me, being the executive producer, before we even got to production, I read the script probably a million times and really just dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and imagining the whole time that we went to these elders. We went to our elders, and one day, these very same elders are going to see this movie, and the community is going to see this movie. The young people are going to see it. So each time I was reading through the script, each time it's like, okay, in real time today, would our young people say this? Would they say this if they're in big bats and they're interacting? How would they interact together? So my part in it was really making sure that the script was spot on. And so I read that a million times. And then before we even submitted it to the Festival de France, I watched it at least 5 times and edited it, watched. Um, and in my heart, in my mind, everything was, like I said, back to the elders. What are they going to think when they see this movie? It has to be relatable on every single generation. And when you watch it, you're going to see that it is relatable in every generation. You're going to see, and you watch it once, twice, 3 times. The more you watch it, you'll see more details. You'll see the subtle, implicit ways of being Lakota. You'll see how we handle suffering. You'll see how we handle joy. You'll see how we handle community. It's all reflective in this movie.
Iona or Ladanian, do you guys have anything to add about your experience, how you used your own personal life experiences and then the professional coaching to really pull off a good performance for your characters?
The experience was very challenging. The acting training really helped us with the scenes. She really helped us feel like we're in the scene in the moment and really how to act it out. And we would do our scene and then they would show us how to act certain spots and feel certain emotions, put the beats in certain spots. And they really helped us throughout their ways in between.
Awesome. So, can you guys tell us a little bit about the process of how actors and actresses and different people that were on the movie were chosen? Did it happen organically, or was there a really refined process to how everybody in the movie came to be there?
It was really organic. Our casting director is amazing, by the way, and she just submersed herself into our communities. She actually moved to the reservation, lived in the reservation, and got to know every single actor, actress, and their families. And all the families actually took her in. She's just this amazing component to War Pony. And War Pony wouldn't even be War Pony if it wasn't for her and her ability to connect to the community so she can bring their strengths into the light so that, they were chosen to be in the movie. And I think for the auntie role, Iona's role, we were just sitting around in Omaha. And I was like, hey, you want to play auntie? I was watching her in the living room and I was like, oh my God, she would just be the perfect auntie. So she was like, well, I did this commercial before.
Nice experience.
So we got her up here right away. And as soon as I introduced her to the casting director and the directors, they just loved her. She got the role right then and there. Like, she's auntie. And then we really have to give credit to, well, everybody, but the 4 young boys, Ladanian and his crew, they were so young, and we worked so hard with them, keeping them in school, keeping them on top of their work, and then getting them to their scenes, and just really, it had to be a real, a network of support, a wraparound support around the young actors and actresses. So it involved their families, the elders, the community, the movie crew, and we all wrapped ourselves around them so that they can be successful in school while they were preparing and acting in the movie as well. So I'm really proud of you, Ladanian, and all of you for that.
Awesome. That sounds very challenging, and that's. I know that we talked to Gina Gammo on the phone, who is one of the directors as well, and she really talked about the kinship and the bonds that you guys built together and how that really has perpetuated a good feeling moving forward on this film. So, do any of you want to speak to that about the community and the relationships that were built while working on this film?
Well, we consider ourselves family now. When we first all met each other and like went out and had a dinner together or whatever, we already didn't know each other. Some of them knew each other, some of them didn't. I know I didn't know a lot of them, and after working with them and being around them, it was just like having a family with you. And the grandmas and the aunties, the youth. I mean, it was beautiful. That's something that I'll never forget.
And for me, like Gina and Riley are my sisters, and that's literally how I see them. And for the young people, their aunties. And just to comment to the extent of kinship, um, anytime something happens to any of our actors or actresses, everyone just kind of steps in, especially the young actors and the actresses that, they're going through anything. We really wrap ourselves around them and come together like a family and always checking on them. We actually won an award at the Festival de France for Best First Film. And the director, Gina, she dedicated the award to Woody. Woody's one of the other actors. He's one of the other young people. And so the award was dedicated to him right in France in front of all those people. It was really beautiful. So that just shows what type of family that we have here with War Pony. I'm gonna need to share it.
How else seen was like, how are we gonna get all these people here? Well, we just asked people who go powwow, and we all came together and just expanded. It was amazing. We made a little powwow happen. We had powwow dancers around the group, and yeah, I had an amazing time. I don't know what other words could, and just seeing the faces, people who grew up, and yeah, amazing memories.
It's just amazing to see all of us random people in the reservation come together and become a family and grow and continue to stay in touch and check up on each other. Gina's like a second mom to me now. She'll fly me out to California whenever I can. Amazing family we grow together.
That sounds awesome. So we know that two men from Pine Ridge did write most of this film, right? Franklin Subob and Bill Reddy. And then Riley and Gina were the producers, directors, and Pate Chantewi was the executive producer. So can you tell us a little bit about what an executive producer does?
Everything from casting to directing to pulling people together, the community, to supporting the actors, actresses. I did everything in the movie. So there is one scene that I directed that I put something in there that's just kind of out of context a little bit, but within context. Has to do with who we are as Lakota people. And so I'm kind of waiting for somebody, once the film comes out, I have some gifts for whoever finds that thing in that movie that I put in there, in that scene. That's the only thing I'm gonna say, otherwise you're gonna figure it out. But yeah, so just everything, from even fundraising, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, because production was only 10 weeks. But the making of this movie and the building of the foundation of this movie was 7 years. And so it was 7 years of building those relationships and bringing the directors in and getting our community and our relatives to trust and getting our actors and actresses and their families to trust, and especially our young actors and actresses because they were still in school, and getting their families to trust. And so, yeah, I did pretty much everything. And then whenever production started, I did the cultural competency training for everyone that came in. And we had, our main film director. He came from, I think, Mexico. We had people coming from France. I mean, we had just this amazing team that just came together to produce this film and to make it happen. And so I played a key role in all of that too as well, just keeping everybody together, letting them know what to expect when they come into the reservation, making sure everyone's following protocols, making sure nobody violates our protocols as Lakota people. So it's a real important role.
Yeah, it's very important, and I think about that. And earlier we had the panel with Jane Myers, the producer of Prey, and Christian Wasanana, who works on Yellowstone, and they talked about Indigenous people having a seat at the table and being a part of that conversation, and now hearing locally, from our own Oglala relatives here that you guys were doing that work simultaneously. And to think, um, somebody that I grew up with and looked to as a pillar of strength with Pate Chantewi here, and then looking at her and say, I know an executive producer. It's amazing. Let's give her a round of applause for that. That's an amazing amazing position, and I think about that, and I think about this movie, and how would it have turned out if it was non-Oglala or non-Lakota people, non-Indigenous people just coming on to our reservation and making this movie? It probably wouldn't have worked, right? And so that is the real importance of our people being a part of that.
I want to speak to that, especially to all our young people in the room. Start thinking about that, because first of all, this is kind of logistics. We wanted to make sure we followed all protocols, like traditionally with our elders, our community, but also with our tribal governing body. And so when we approached the tribe, there's no board, there's no overseeing of any movies coming to our nation or about us. There's nothing at all. Luckily, I was the executive producer because I made sure that everything was followed accordingly. But I think that's the missing component. The missing component is that we don't have anything established as a nation to oversee these movies, to make sure. So just to file something with the tribe, we went to the IRB, even though I know as a graduate student that we don't need to go to the IRB because it wasn't research. But we submitted to them anyway, just to have somewhere to submit the movie to say, hey, we're making this movie, but there's nothing. So we're kind of talking about it with Thunder Valley and just trying to figure out something. Something needs to be done. Just since War Pony, I was already approached on another movie, and the guy was coming to make a movie about our traditional medicine. Like there's a scene about a medicine person in the movie. And so I went to some medicine relatives and we edited his script. And when I took it back to him, he didn't want to pay. And so, I had to go into warrior mode on him, which I'm not scared to do. And so now he's not welcome here. I'll make sure of that. But if we had something in place, then I wouldn't have to be that person and I wouldn't have to do that. So I really want our young people to start thinking about that and really follow up on this. Come back in, when we do the premiere, come back and watch it. And watch your peers and see what you are capable of doing. Because every one of you are capable of writing your own story. And that's really where we're at right now in 2022. The whole globe is moving towards meeting people where they're at and allowing them their voice and letting them speak. And for us, Lakota, we have been silenced for too long. We have to stop doing that now, letting people silence us.
Yeah, that's definitely an important piece. And to look around and see that we have all of these resources in our own community, and to be thinking about the future generations, about how are we going to make sure that when something is trying to be made about us or for us or within our territories and our homelands, that they are checking with our own people first and making sure it's relevant and respectful and all of those things. And I think that's really an important thing that we do need to think about. So thank you for bringing that up. The next question is just for the actors and the actresses. Was there a certain scene or a certain line in the movie that was your favorite or maybe your most challenging? And how did you get through it?
Well, my favorite scene is when I have to look at Billy's neck full of hickeys, and say, "What the hell is that on your neck?" That was my favorite part, and the challenging part was having to constantly tell him that, he needed to get his wing out of jail, and I wasn't babysitting his kid. But all in all, that was really a wonderful scene, and I enjoyed it. I still can't believe I'm in a movie, though. It's just not real to me yet.
They're really reminiscing all their lines now.
One of my most favorite moments in the movie is probably when me and my friends running around having fun, being moved north. And one of my most challenging scenes is probably when I got kicked out of my dad's house and was on the street starving, and Billy picked me up and put me in and fed me. It's something that probably mostly goes on the reservation. Like, keep most of the kids off the streets my age. Just to be warm and stay safe in the house. Winter's right around the corner. It wins. That's just stay safe.
Right. I would say the most challenging is the scene where I communicating back and forth. The character that I played, Angie, is a drug dealer, right? And she utilizes the nephews to make money, and she makes a lot of money doing that. And in this particular scene, I had to be mean to him. And when you're putting that emotion and you're getting told to do it over and over again, and you're looking at this little kid, it kind of makes you think about what that real woman went through and what she did with the boys that lived with her. And helping in a good way, but going about it in a negative aspect, with drugs and things like that. But that was a hard part, and having to say it over and over. And just think about, I'm an auntie, so I have lots of nephews too, and how I talk to them and correct them. But that was one of those things where you have to take yourself out. I would never do that, but I'm playing a woman who did, and it really did happen on the list. And really the movie. There you go.
I want to name my.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What about you as the executive producer? What was your favorite part?
Well, there's this scene, and I really wanted to show it today, but we couldn't get it together. But there's a scene at Big Bats, and it's the scene where, it's one of the scenes in the movie where you just feel like this is so real. It's just like you're there. And I think all four of the older actors are in there because they're outside in the car. And then you watched this morning. And then the four younger actors are coming in, Ladanian, when you guys come running into Big Bats. And then they get all their snacks and they go up to the counter. And then our actresses, one of our main actresses is in that scene. I just really like it. It just makes it feel like you're there. And then it's Big Bats, everyone knows Big Bats. So it's the Big Bat scene. So when you guys see it, the Big Bat scene is my favorite. And then the challenging part for me was the scene I directed, because I was actually there for the first time all day from sun up to sundown, and it's exhausting. It's totally, completely exhausting to just do the scenes over and over and over again. I was like, I'm so glad I'm just here for the day. Yeah, so it's really challenging, but once you see the movie all together, it's like, wow, you're just so mind blown. It's like, that wasn't that bad, right?
Awesome.
So here at the Lakota Media Summit, we're talking about narrative shift and Indigenous people being able to tell our own story. So film is a very powerful tool that we can use to shift the narrative and tell our own story. It's an art form. So being part of a film and a piece of art really that is telling our own story. Now in hindsight, how does that make each of you feel?
Well, in reality, me watching grandkids, I do that. And when Billy just puts his child in my lap and once they head out the door, that's something that I've experienced over and over and over. So that part of the scene for me is reality. And another thing is the way things are with the young men that have children and think that the grandparents have to watch them as, a reality. So in that part, then that's just me acting the way I am every day.
Being immortalized on film in that character.
Mhm.
I'm not a drug dealer, I didn't do that, but I am that part at that moment.
Mhm.
I did, I rewinded like, oh my God, I rewinded again, like, oh my. You too, I even reminded her, like, oh my God, that's already. Yep, that, I mean, it's there.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed it again,
Mhm.
but it's like, wow, we were really on film.
Mhm.
We really did help somebody tell that story. It really happened on res like that.
Mhm. I think that's a really, important thing too. When we know these big actors and actresses, and they play one of our favorite characters in a movie, then we're forever associate them with that movie and that role and who that is. And so we have to really be careful and mindful that we're not doing that to our own people when the movie comes out. But I think that's an important point. Yeah. And really like taking on that responsibility of now people are going to look at you and say they did that and I can do that too. And I think that's a really um, important piece, a really, really important piece of being able to tell our own story, is that now other people are empowered to do the same thing. And so I really want to thank each and every one of you for your part in that, to empower our own people to tell our own stories.
I was just gonna share that that's just so important. The what stuck in your mind or what sets in your mind. We ended up submitting the film to several film festivals. We got denied in Canada, we got denied in the United States, and France accepted it. Whenever we watched it, we ended up taking 21 people to go watch it. Now, typically at the Festival de France, you can bring two. But we went above and beyond. and we took 21. And we was in a theater of 1,500 people, and we had the whole middle row. It was just all of us. I think we were all in our own world when we were watching it. But for me, I kept looking at Billy's mom was there because Billy couldn't make it, and Justin, who acts as Billy, his mom was there and she couldn't make it. And then the other main actress, she couldn't make it, but her mom was there. So there's a lot of moms that we took to France in place of their children. And so that's why I kept watching. I kept watching the moms. Oh, we were all a bawling mess. Just a bawling mess. It was just like, oh my God. But we ended up getting a standing ovation over there. Every single person in the audience stood up. And it was just the most beautiful feeling. So for me, I'm always, trying to keep a balance with the community and the people and the movie and keeping everyone informed. And so just know that there's like the art side of the movie, like we're talking about today, but there's also this business side. And so part of that is that when you submit these films, they have to go into negotiation for distribution. And so that's where it's at right now in the United States. It's in negotiation. And so we're not anticipating it coming out till 2023 here in the United States, but it's already in Europe. And so when it does come out, we will be working with Thunder Valley. And we're going to collaborate to do our first premiere will be on the reservation. And so we're going to do several premieres. We are going to do several premieres, but the first will be in Pine Ridge. And then we're planning on hitting the other reservations as well. So before it even goes into the theaters, that's what's going to happen. And it's going to be free. I also think it's important to note that the directors, like we had mentioned at the beginning, it was a friendship that started between the writers and the directors. And then it just kind of organically turned into this movie. They've never, ever once accepted money on behalf of this movie for themselves. Everything that the two directors have done, they've been doing it out of their own pocket. And any of the proceeds, all the proceeds are going back to the people, the writers, the producers, the directors aren't getting even paid for that. So that's something that's really different. Because a lot of directors will come in, they want to make their money. They have that missing component of community and connecting to the people. And so for this movie, that I think that's important to know that they're not making anything off the movie. And the reason it took us so long is because our funding nobody wanted to fund an Indigenous film. Nobody wanted to fund a film that had all Indigenous actors and had an Indigenous background and on Indigenous lands. So we would get so far and get ready for production, and then they would pull the funding. They would see some part of the scene in the movie, oh, they didn't like it. But we kept strong and steady. We're keeping it like this. This isn't changing. So we kept losing funders. It's independent film, so we kept losing the funding. Thankfully, it all came together because we're here today. So, just wanted to share that much.
And it is a great movie.
Yeah, we are excited to see it, aren't we? I know I am, definitely. So that is going to be really exciting when we do get to let everyone see it. So just the last question I have for you guys, and then we can open it up to questions from the people. But what does the future look like for you as an actor or an actress or a writer or a producer? And are there any current projects or future projects that you're working on that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, for me, I'm 72 years old, and I don't know how long I'm gonna be on this earth, but to be in a movie and all Lakota movie, I'm proud because my people will be able to see me after I'm gone, and they'll laugh, and it's just, I'm overwhelmed with everything that I did in that movie. Uh, Actually, I cry a lot when I watch it, really. 'Cause, I mean, you're watching yourself on a movie. I mean, what? It's awesome. That's how I feel.
For me, this is a really early point in my life, so I want to pursue an acting career and continue on this journey. And I'm currently working on getting on a Hulu series. That's all I have.
Awesome.
Me too. I'm with Mama Leo here. That's right. Thanks for watching everybody on the screen. And I'm 50 years old, and for real, to be immortalized in that position. Great experience, and I'll take it as far as it will go. Thank you.
For me, I'm going to be very busy with War Pony Yellow 2023, but I am writing a script and submitting it to Hulu. And it's about all my grandmas and them living in Denver and Pine Ridge and back and forth. So I'm working on that as a side project. And I'm actually thinking about enrolling in a film school so I can do more producing and more. I just really want us as a nation to figure out where we fit into the scheme of things when it comes to these movies. So I plan on working more with Thunder Valley to try to figure out, how we can hold space for those conversations. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you guys, and I really think that you guys can do whatever you want, and I wish you all the very best of luck, and know that we all support you and are very, very proud of each and every one of you. So with that, does anybody have any questions for any of our panelists? We have a mic there.
I'd just like to add that I'm really proud to see you. For me too, it's like going back in time a little bit when I was young, personally. Young, I was still in high school, and my stepdad, I'll tell you, was Frank Marshall. And I just lost my mom September 6th, but as my daughter puts it, she wasn't our Hallmark mother. My mom wasn't. Really awesome, and they were gathering some years ago when I was in high school. Your dad was there, too. He was laughing. I could still hear his laugh when I was in high school, and I just went and I bought these boots, these tall boots, and I was ready to go somewhere. I don't know where, but they were all congregating and talking, laughing. Of course, we had music going on. Mama comes in the door. I don't know if she's looking mean. He's just like looking at her. And it ended up really being the lead role was real fun. She's like, all right, you Lakotas, you get up and you dance. We did, and I love to dance. And here I have the high boots on. So I just thank you, and remember them. They're all gone. My mom, Frank. Just really thanking and just really proud of you all, and to the young person, just really giving you kudos.
Thank you.
Good morning, relatives. I just wanted to thank you for the courage that it took to do this. Right? These aren't easy things that you did. And to acknowledge the way you did it, the protocol that you took, that's unusual. That's not the normal in the film industry to enter into a community and have that respect that you demanded. And so I want to remind the young people in here, it's cool to stand on your values like that. They stayed there. They stayed put. They stayed firm. And This is how we're gonna represent ourselves. And so that's very powerful. To me, that was one of the most powerful things you said today, that you did it on your own terms. And that's powerful. You don't get to see that every day in our communities or in this world. You know, us marginalized people exercising our liberation the way that you did. That's what liberation looks like. That's how you carry it out in action. It's the way that you demanded that if you're going to put us on film and immortalize us, we're going to do it on our terms because you're representing our values over time. Not just today, the stand you took, but in the future, they're going to see that those Lakota did it like this. They set a precedent. They made a protocol in today's time of how we're going to be seen. And so for that, I applaud you. And applaud the team and everyone that had input to make this happen. It took all of you. So thank you for that.
Won't be left.
I seen she mentioned the powwow scene. Was that in Porcupine? I was one of the extras.
Oh.
And I always wondered about the movie. I was like, nobody was talking about it or anything. But like I thought, they gave up on it, but I guess not. But I'm really excited to see how it turned out. And I wanted to do films, like short films. And I was probably in 7th grade when I wanted to do some. But I never seen any, native directors or actors and actresses, and praise them coming out, and we've been getting seen a lot, and seeing you guys up here is really, inspiring to me, and I've been had this idea for 3 years to make this film about the missing and murdered Indigenous women, and having a POV on what happens and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been kind of thinking about it and kind of writing scripts here and there. But yeah, you guys just really inspired me, and I'm excited to see you guys' movie. And yeah, that's it.
I don't know if
What is your name?
My name is Angelina Swallow.
Where do you? How old are you?
I'm 17.
17. Are you still in school?
Yeah, I'm a senior at Ren.
At Little. Oh, that's the best place to be at.
Nah.
Do you know Daniel Nathan? Oh yeah, he's great. That's a good teacher to do your. Maybe you could do some skits.
Yeah.
On your writing.
He worked with me for speeches and stuff. I know he loves to get scholarships.
I'll give you my number and email too, and I'll be here to support you too. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
I had a question. Why did you guys name it War Pony?
Good question.
We named it War Pony the day before the deadline at Festival de France this year. It was always Beast. That was the name of the movie. And the movie, the first writer before Frank started writing was Billy. And Billy had a dog named Beast. And the day that we went up to Peishla to pray about, after we visited with the elders, his dog was murdered. And so that was kind of like the same time we talked to the elders, the same time the dog got murdered, the same time we prayed in Peishla. So we just called it Beast from then on in honor of the dog. And as it came time to submit to the festival, it was almost named Kola. That was almost the name of the movie. And I was reaching out to everybody. I was like, what do you guys, what's your definition of Kola? Because I wanted everyone's input. And it's really up to the two writers. The two writers is Frank and Billy. They're Frank and Billy. So Kola, one of them liked it, one of them didn't. And I think it was Frank. He said, "What about War Pony?" And then we had to run it by Billy, and Billy's like, "Yeah." And so they just decided on War Pony. None of us liked it. I'm just gonna say that right now. But now we do. When they first, when it's just like with change, change is difficult, and sometimes it takes a while to adjust to that change. And so from calling this movie Beast for 7 years, and then all of a sudden they like blindsided us with War Pony, and we're like, what? But now it fits perfectly, and the reason they call it War Pony is because of all the war ponies in the movie. And you know what a war pony is, right? What's a war pony?
Caller.
Yeah. Because the movie's filled with war ponies.
I had the same thought about this time. I thought it was Wilma's car to use as a war pony. Any other questions over here?
Hi, I'm Bradley Hawk with Ground Control. You guys are exactly what we're looking for. The homegrown actors, the homegrown feet, the homegrown production. We want it all done right here. Don't want it taken away. If people can come and show us, but we don't want our hands built. So with that being said, we're working on a series. But our ethos is that we're gonna attack the cryptids that are in our cultures, and our differences, and how we handle them. Prayers, thoughts, things like that. So we're wondering if you'd ever come by and want to check it out, Ground Control, and work with us, and collaborate on that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we want to see that. Tomorrow we're getting some showing the short films on the big screens at the summit, which is blowing our minds. And a lot of it is like what you guys did. You guys did it. No one told you how. No one said go ahead and do it. No one told you no either.
It's so hard.
Exactly. Yeah. Move fast, break things, and then when people later on, you can ask for forgiveness. And that's what we have to do now. Is we have to get it and hit it hard because we're behind. We really are. So I was asking if you guys would come collaborate with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Yay.
All right. Well, again, I know we got lunch ready, and I think, yeah, sure.
Of all the young people in here, are anybody else interested in acting or writing scripts? Yeah.
All right, got a few.
Awesome. I would love to visit with you after this.
All right, so thank each and every one of you for being here. Again, awesome job. We can't wait to see the movie, and we're very proud of you and appreciate each and every one of you. Let's give them a round of applause, guys. I know all these chords. No hard questions.